Send me the link for the Mandala, buddy.
We are known as Arius. We Pronomis isicu Deus noster. Rodate quia de pacem sunt et abundantia diligentibus te. Pacem Domine in diebus nostris. We are known as Arius. We Pronomis isicu Deus noster. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto. Sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. Pacem Domine in diebus nostris, quia non est alius, qui pro nobis disitum Deus noster.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Mandala, bringing you a banter-packed infogasm of esoterics, politics, counterculture, and an evening of whimsical philosophizing with your friends about the really, really important things. Double so for today's episode. We got some really interesting stuff for you, some information that I stumbled upon randomly, which it's very strange. The stuff that we've been talking about recently, it seems to want to be pushed in a certain direction. It's stuff that I've only recently kind of connected together thanks to the help of kind of having my buddy here, Ix, to bounce things off of and different information that I've known for a while, but I just didn't really put the pieces together in my head. And now I'm really starting to think about things and have and through our discussions here have a really altered view of the history of the last couple hundred years and of where we're headed, in the near future. So as always, I have my partner in crime, IXI, and we have Sean here as a guest. He's from the Political Incorrect Facebook group, which I created a couple years back.
Thank you.
You guys want to say hi real quick before we begin?
Yes, I would. Greetings, listeners. Thanks for having me on, Shakti.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Always good to be here.
And it's always great to have you, man. Like I'm telling you, man, I've known all this shit for a long ass time. Not all this shit, but I've known a lot about all of this stuff for a while. But having you here on the podcast and taking time down to sit down and talk about these things and bounce them off that big brain Wojak head of yours has really led me to have some to change my mind and to have some different discoveries about, like I said, what's been happening in the past and what's about to happen in the near future.
I think that inspiration comes when you apply sort of esoteric principles to real life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always refer to the black sun as a good example of that. How it starts at a central point and then it branches off into like many different patterns. And technically you could scale it infinitely if you continued the pattern. It's like you throw a rock in a stream and the ripples like go every which way. I think that when you start talking about the things that you know, it makes you want to learn more. And like what happened earlier, you end up going down like a trail that leads you to a new discovery. And, I think that that's sort of the take home from esoterics, the way it could benefit anybody.
No doubt.
Quite rightly said. We can learn a lot from our ancestors. Keep in mind, people like the Vikings were navigating across entire oceans just by the stars, and they didn't have the knowledge of geography and stuff today. So.
Right.
They had the knowledge of Amanita muscaria.
Yeah. The berserkers all there. I tried that one time. It was pretty chill. I had some nice muscaria. It was kind of like a muscle relaxer.
What happened, man? Like that, I've heard horror stories.
There are horror stories.
Real sick.
Yeah, it's not psilocybin. It's a different thing. To me, like,
I know what it is. I just know that it's also mildly toxic, and for some people, it's like instant vomit.
Sometimes it's like the flu, sort of, but other times it's great.
I made it into a tea. I bought some, and I made it into a tea, and it was actually really nice. It felt like taking a muscle relaxer, like what do they call them? I forget the category. But yeah, it felt kind of just like taking it was like a wavy kind of muscle relaxy kind of feeling. It was nice. Actually, there's actually a meditation on my YouTube channel called Soma Meditation where I recorded myself when I was high on Amanita muscaria and made a meditation. So if you want to be interested, if you're interested in what it tastes like, you can go look at my facial, or what it's like. You can look at my facial expression in that video. Anyway, so what I mentioned about having coming into some new information that if you've been a listener of the Mandala for the last couple weeks, or even just any amount of time, you've heard us talk about this kind of strange way, and of course in different conspiracy circles, it's not exactly a secret that groups like the Freemasons and occult orders have always been tied with the elites, and we've gone over how that they've been involved in overturning governments, and in the case of the American French revolutions, things like that, in the working out of the Enlightenment. It's interesting. The gentleman who wrote this book that I'm going to talk about, The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, which discusses the new age and how things are going to be changed, and then this is kind of the same view which is held by these groups like the Masons and the Theosophists and the Crowleyites and these type of people. He was a member of the actual Bavarian Illuminati with Adam Weishaupt.
The Illuminati,
the actual one, yeah, and he fell out with Weishaupt and their Illuminati because he felt that he felt that they were trying to bring a new age in through just relying upon the intellect and reason. And he kind of, in the first letter that he writes in the book, he kind of rails against the fallacy of reason, and he uses Kant as an example of how intellect can't ultimately manifest the ultimate reality, and it's manifested by inspiration or the Holy Spirit. And this is actually very interesting. I was talking to somebody last night in a Discord server. They're asking me about Mahayana Buddhism, and they when I was talking about the kind of philosophical structure of Mahayana, he said that it sounded kind of like Kant, and that Nagarjuna, who's seen as like the main progenitors of the philosophy, he basically comes to the same conclusion that you use logic to untangle logic in order to develop a kind of awareness, an experiential gnosis of wisdom, and not just the kind of like book wisdom. So okay,
it's also an important point for anybody that's listening that is not researched. The Illuminati has sort of a couple different ideas and definitions, but the one Shakti is referring to is the actual open Illuminati. A long time ago, this kind of a thing was like not so much of a secret. It was a known thing to exist, and a lot of the aristocracies were known to have been part of it. And you can even see writings about the Illuminati in some of the early founders' documents in the United States, saying specifically how they don't want their influence here. This is because this was not a secret back then, and it wasn't, brushed off as some sort of conspiracy thing. And it also wasn't mysterious. And these days people will say, "Oh, the Illuminati is behind this or this," but if they don't have the proof of that, then it's just people write it off as saying, "Well, the Illuminati does not exist." The inability to pin something on an organization, of course, doesn't invalidate its existence. But that's today. Back then, you could read about the Illuminati in newspapers.
We should also keep in mind that most of the people that disbelieve in the Illuminati have not done one iota of any research on it. So let's make sure our listeners and we are remembering that.
I think a lot of it, the thing is that, a lot of these things were very secret. So, I mean, it's just recently that all this information's gotten onto the internet. So unless you're like out there digging through like old German libraries, you're not going to find like a lot of source material, because we've just started to dump all this shit on the internet. And the amount that's even made it online so far is amazing.
Yeah, in a way, we kind of had our own dark age for a while. Because a long time ago, esoteric concepts were something that were not secret. A good example is during John Dee's time. Like what we were reading said, what he was doing was something that anybody that had a cursory understanding of sorcery would have known already. He wasn't bringing that much new stuff to the table, more like refining it. Same goes for concepts such as the Illuminati, such as really alchemy and Hermeticism, Druidism, and all this stuff. And then we have like a dark age through the Industrial Revolution, where basically anything esoteric gets thrown out, because the only thing that matters is your economic unit value. Goes through a couple of wars, and then the internet brings back all the dialogue that sort of took a back seat for a while.
Yeah, it's a digital renaissance. So, I was talking to a friend who said that he was doing a breathing exercise to help him sleep, where he would breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out. And I was like, what the fuck? Have you been watching my YouTube videos or something? Because that's one of the exercises that the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn teaches. And this gentleman is a Catholic, and he definitely doesn't like anything to do with that kind of thing. So he was kind of freaked out about it, and people were asking me what the Golden Dawn was. So I ended up looking at the Golden Dawn's Wikipedia and some websites and researching about the founding of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Ultimately, it seems to have been founded with some kind of connection to both Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism, kind of as an offshoot, using this strange cipher, this strange series of texts, which the origin of is unknown. But in this cipher, or in these weird texts that formed the structure for this occult organization, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, it recommends certain things for the establishment of a new esoteric order. Of course, like I said, some of the main founders were Freemasons, so they weren't at all, and like you said, a lot of people were not at all unfamiliar with these concepts. But in the particular case of the Golden Dawn, if you look at the history, there's this series of ciphers, or these like strange writings, which formed the basis for their particular occult order and their system. So what it basically says is like it's a reliance upon an interpretation of Kabbalah. There's different alchemical aspects of it. It uses geomancy. There's certain rituals which are described. So
they're basically just taking anything that's shown effect and throwing it into a pile.
I would call it as a syncretic kind of founding of a new occult society. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, what's weird is that the supposed cipher or whatever that's credited with the information which the founders of the Golden Dawn used to create the esoteric order, alludes to certain things which wouldn't have been known at the time that the cipher was supposedly penned, which is 1809. For example, there's references to to interpretations of Egyptian hieroglyphs, which weren't known until 1820, when the Rosetta Stone was found. There's references to the Tree of Life and its relation to the tarot cards. I know this because I actually have a fat ass book. It's like the size of a fucking brick. and it's all the rituals and everything. You could probably use the book to start your very own Golden Dawn chapter if you wanted to. I mean, it's got everything in it. I've barely even scratched and looked through it. I was interested in the Golden Dawn through a gentleman named Israel Regardie, who is an author. Have you guys ever heard of Israel Regardie?
I have not.
Nah, he was one of the first people that I was really interested in the very beginning when I first started to do meditation. He advocated for this meditation, which you'll find all over my YouTube channel, called the Middle Pillar, and that apparently was popular with the Golden Dawn. So he also has a bunch of books on Kabbalah, which are kind of an idiosyncratic Western idea about Kabbalah. If you go to an actual Kabbalah like teacher, like a Jewish one, the way that they teach it is very different. It's kind of like they tried to use the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, tried to use Kabbalah as a kind of structure for their ritual working. And if you looked at any kind of Masonic symbolism or what they study and stuff, that you'll find that they also lean heavy on Kabbalah. So when I was looking into the foundation of the Golden Dawn, I came across that the gentleman who had been one of the main founders, for example, let's see, I'll just read it here. In October 1887, Westcott, and that is William Wynne Westcott, who was a Freemason, who supposedly was involved with a few people who found these documents. He was a Freemason, and he says he claimed in these ciphers, he claimed to have found the address of some German countess and a prominent Rosicrucian named Anna Sprengel, whose address was said to have been found in the decoded cipher manuscripts. According to Westcott, Sprengel claimed the ability to contact certain supernatural entities, known as the Secret Chiefs, that were considered the authorities over any magical order or esoteric organization. So, when we're talking about this kind of piqued my interest because it reminded me of the Enochian angels. It reminded me of the way that the Freemasons think of themselves and the authority that's vested in them. It reminded me of what I've read from people in the Theosophists like Alice Bailey and Helena Blavatsky. It reminded me of the New Age concept of the Ascended Masters and all these people out here who are channeling the Ascended Masters who claim to like be ushering in a new age. And it reminded me of just in general, like you might call it an angelic hierarchy, which is certainly present in the Golden Dawn's writings. You might call it like there is definitely a precedent in Eastern thought. We call them the rishis, and there's certain planetary bodies and star systems which are said to be involved somehow with the way that things pan out on the earth. In my own sect, Tibetan Buddhism, we have this kind of understanding of Shambhala. You might have heard of it before, which is seen as kind of like the same thing, some kind of intermediary force which exists on another plane and kind of like it operates in this world. And kind of sends its tendrils in this world in a certain way in order to bring it to a certain place. So these people, the Theosophists and the Masons and whatnot, the Rosicrucians, they've all been working to try to bring humanity to a new age where they felt that that old biases and prejudices could be destroyed. We could have world peace, and the inner esoteric realization of the mystics and whatnot could have been made into just a natural experience. So they're looking for a kind of perfection of mankind, and they call it cryptically rebuilding the temple, in allusion to Solomon's temple, which was destroyed.
And the idea that the body is also a temple.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of layers of what that, yeah.
Yeah, the temple has many different meanings to it. So there's Solomon's temple, physical
Yeah.
temple. Then there's the body, the temple of Christ, so the human body.
Mhm.
Then there's a bunch of bodies together to make a church.
Mhm.
You know, a church isn't a building. Church is the followers of Christ.
Mhm.
Temples are their bodies. So you're going to hear and see a lot of symbology with temples. And whenever you're looking at a temple in esoteric works, especially by some of these orders, you want to make sure that you're looking at everything in the picture, because what you're looking at might not actually be a building.
That's also kind of what a mandala is. In Buddhism, all the temples have very specific outlines, or in just in Buddhism in general, or any Eastern or any real religion at all, even Western religions. You know, cathedrals and whatnot are built as a kind of microcosmic representation of the macrocosm.
For example, in Western religions, Roman Catholicism, which I'm supposed to be a part of, we have the concept of, just being honest, but they have the concept of transubstantiation, whereby, you know, you take the body and blood of Christ, and it becomes body and blood of Christ when it enters your temple, your being. So that's
interesting. They talk about blood consumption. That's a whole other can of worms there.
Oh, yeah, it's very symbolic. It represents life, death, values, the sanctity of life. Very interchangeable in its uses.
Yeah, so I didn't have enough time, and I'd like to in the future to talk more about this particular book. But this particular book, when you go and when I looked up what these secret chiefs were, who are said to be behind the founding of the Golden Dawn, and I'll just read you the wiki because it's a really good definition. In various occult movements, secret chiefs are said to be transcendent cosmic authorities, a spiritual hierarchy responsible for the operation and moral caliber of the cosmos, or for overseeing the operations of an esoteric organization that manifests outwardly in the form of a magical order or lodge system. And by the way, I've heard it from some Masons that someone like a Saint Germain, if you've heard of him, actually oversees the highest level of Masonry, whether that's for better or worse, because I honestly haven't really made my mind up about all this stuff. But anyway, their names and description have varied throughout time, dependent upon those who reflect their experience or contact with them. They are variously held to exist on higher planes of being or to be incarnate. If incarnate, they may be described as being gathered at some special locations, such as Shambhala, or scattered throughout the world working anonymously. One early and influential source on these entities is Karl von Eckartshausen, whose The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, published in 1795, explained in some detail their character and motivations. Several 19th and 20th century occultists claim to have belonged to or have contacted these secret chiefs and made these communications known to others, including Helena Petrova Blavatsky, who called them the Tibetan Masters or Mahatmas. She took a more Eastern view of these things, and certainly, like I said, there is an Eastern precedence for this kind of idea. C.W. Leadbeater and Alice Bailey, who called them the Masters of Ancient Wisdom. Guy Bayard, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, who called them Ascended Masters. Generally, if you talk to New Agers nowadays, they refer to these type of people, or whatever they are, as Ascended Masters. Aleister Crowley, who also, like I said, I was saying to IXI here, when Aleister Crowley first joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, he was told by the leader of the order to read this book, The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. Aleister Crowley used the term to refer to members of the upper three grades of his order. A, and there's three dots, and there's A, and then three dots. I never understood the symbolism of that, but yeah. Dion Fortune, who called them the Esoteric Order, and Max Heindel, who called them Elder Brothers. One source is a 12th century Persian, Ali Hujriri. In his divine court, there are 300 Akhyar, excellent ones, 40 Abdal, substitutes, 7 Abrar, piously devoted ones, 4 Atrar, pillars, 3 Nukaba, and 1 Kutub. Kutub is a very Sufi concept. It's like a Kutub means like a polarity, like a pole, Kutub. And so the Sufis kind of believe that there's a person on the earth who is like the polar focus for all of the kind of like the activities of the angels and of the advancement of mankind towards their creator. All the quote unquote all these saints know each other and cannot act without mutual consent. It is the task of Atwad to go around the whole world every night, and there should be any place on which their eyes have not fallen, next day some flaw will appear in that place, and they must then inform the Kutub in order that he may direct his attention to the weak spot, and that by his blessings the imperfection may be remedied. Another source is from Ibn Arabi. If you know anything about Sufism, you'll definitely encounter Ibn Arabi. I have a couple books from him, very interesting stuff. According to Ibn Arabi, as a more exclusive structure, there are 8 Nujaba, 12 Nukaba, 7 Abada, 4 Abtad, 2 A'imma, and the Kutub. According to the 20th century Sufi Inayat Khan, there are 7 degrees in this hierarchy in ascending order. They are a bunch of Islamic names. He does not say how these levels are populated. Walis may take responsibility for protecting a community in general and work in secret. Kutubs are similarly responsible for large regions. Nabis are charged with bringing a reforming message to nations or faiths, and hence have a public role. Rasuls likely have a mission of transforming the world at large. So here you have some Sufism kind of parallels that's going on in here. Let's see here. In occultism, we have, like I said earlier, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded by those claiming to be in communication with the secret chiefs. Crowley, while in Algeria in 1909, Crowley, along with Victor Newberg, recited numerous Enochian calls. After the 15th call or air, he was told that he had attained the grade of Magister Templii, Master of the Temple, which meant that he himself was now on the level of those secret chiefs. Although this declaration caused many legitimate occultists to stop taking him seriously if they had not done so already, he also described this attainment as a possible and, in fact, a necessary step for all those who truly followed his path. In 1947, when Crowley died, he left behind a sketch of one of these secret chiefs. You might have seen it before. His name is Lam, and it looks like a gray alien. You guys seen the sketch of Lam before?
No, I haven't.
Oh, that's interesting. I got it in my pictures folder because he looks like a big brain Wojak.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Lam.
Yeah, I see that.
Lam, which by the way means path in Tibetan, like lama, someone who shows you the path. He looks like a gray alien. Interesting. Very strange.
What a coincidence.
Huh. What the fuck? Okay, so
Makes me think.
yeah, I'm gonna before we comment and kind of banter about this, let me read a little bit. By the way, like I said, and which I had thought previously, if you go to my YouTube channel, Shaktipat Seer 2, I'm going to be definitely reading this entire book because I feel that it has an extreme importance to understanding not only the way in which the esoteric or the hidden side of things influences the world and the relationship between that.
Things both seen and unseen.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like, it's inseparable.
Mhm.
And people that say that it's not are kidding themselves.
No, they
And
don't.
right down to the idea of the new world. I mean, where the hell did that come from? You know, like, you can't escape esoterics when you talk about the formation of where we are, and you certainly can't ignore it with where we're going.
Even on the base level of understanding esoterics from a formation of where we're at right now, like we're saying here, the reason why that we're spending all this time on this subject is because groups like the Freemasons they created the new world. Remember the quote from John Dee? I don't have the book. Where the hell's the book? I would bust it out again. Oh God! But yeah, the Enochian angels basically told John Dee that he would be instrumental in founding the new world, and John Dee was he was accredited with coming up with the term. He coined the term the British Empire. So it seems to me that there's some kind of if you want to take a leap of faith here, if you want to be a total skeptic, you can say, okay, whatever, yeah, it's all just a bunch of BS. But if you want to take a leap of faith here and kind of consider the fact that it's objectively true that these groups have created the modern world, then it's interesting what we're talking about to understand where it comes from.
Yeah, at least if you don't believe in this stuff, at least know why you do. Why you choose not to believe. Because many people don't even go that far, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I got it right here. It says, "New worlds shall spring of these, new manners, strange men. The old ways cease, the new begin."
oh, that's so crazy, dude. It's just fucking nuts. But yeah, that's what the Enochian angels told the
Well,
dude.
actually, I have the part above it too. That's even crazier. What I speak hath not been revealed, not in these last times of the second last world, but I began new worlds, new people, new kings, and new knowledge of a new government. New worlds shall spring of these, new manners, strange men. The old ways cease, the new begin. That's the whole thing.
I love how the last bit rhymes on that. It's like a poem, like a prophecy. But so you have D influencing the Hermetic Order, the Golden Dawn, and all of them are kind of we're kind of like involved here in ourselves of unveiling what's being veiled in order to do the work that these same people were trying to do. So in that sense, we're part of the same continuum that they were and that they saw themselves as. So let me read a little bit from the Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. First, in this first letter, he kind of gives the rationale for why that he believes what he believes in and why and what's happening on the earth and what the New Age is about. And in the second letter, I've only gotten to the second letter, guys, and I promise I'm going to get through this whole thing so I can get more informed about this particular topic, especially this book. And I'll be posting a video of me reading the whole book on my YouTube channel, so be sure to check it out. So, it's an interesting gentleman, and the way that he describes esoterics is very relatable to me, and I think a lot of my more spiritually inclined subscribers will also find that what he's saying, this gentleman who was a member of the literal Bavarian Illuminati, what he's saying is actually interesting and makes sense. So, let's see here, where to begin. He's kind of in his first letter, he attacks the kind of intellectual rationalism which was pervading science and things in his day, which is the 18th century. He's kind of critiquing the Renaissance as being overly focused upon intellect and quote unquote science. And of course, there's parallels to that in the world that we live in today, and the world that was created by these kind of groups, be it purposely or not. Anyway, so absolute truth does not exist for the sensuous man. It exists only for interior and spiritual men who possess a subtle sensorium, or to speak more correctly, who possesses an interior sense to receive the absolute truth of the transcendental world. A spiritual faculty which cognizes spiritual objects as objectively and naturally as the exterior senses perceive external phenomena. This interior faculty of the man, this spiritual, this sensorium for the metaphysical world, is unfortunately not known to those who cognize only outside of it, for it is a mystery of the kingdom of God. The current incredulity towards everything which is not cognized objectively by our senses is the explanation for the misconception of the truths which are, of all, most important to man. But how can this be otherwise? In order to see, one must have eyes; to hear, one must have ears. Every apparent object requires its appropriate senses. So it is that transcendental objects require their sensorium. And this said, sensorium is closed in most men. Hence men judge the metaphysical world through the intelligence of their senses, even as blind imagine colors and deaf judge tones without suitable senses. So, This is the essence of esoterics, which is why it's called hidden. You guys might recognize, who are familiar with me and my work for a long time, I talk a lot about the third eye and the pineal gland, and that type of thing, and that's kind of the horse which I rode in on into YouTube, which got me a lot of following, because I have a lot of exercises involved in getting these, what he calls the the interior organ is the intuitive sense of the transcendental world, and until this intuitive sense is effective in us, we certainly have no certainty of more lofty truths. So,
I think that one other thing about the esoterics and the idea of like becoming aware of whatever it is you're looking for, maybe connections from the past and all that stuff, is try to envision, of course, a pyramid. And people can choose where they want to be on that pyramid. If you're at the slave order at the bottom, and there's a reason pyramids are shown everywhere, then you can only see so much. Where if you're at the next order up, you can look down on the slaves, but you don't see up above you. And then you look down from the next level and down from the top of it. And it's all about your perspective. And perspective can be widened, or you can ignore things. But a whole lot of, I think, what's happening when people miss things is they avoid them. You see this a lot these days, especially in politics, when people typically on the left try to avoid facts. That's why you never see them participating in debates with the right wingers, because they're falling for that I want to be at the lower perspective order rather than take the scary route and embrace new knowledge, which might, break your preconceptions of life.
Yes, and they also fight against the natural rank structure, if you will, of society around the world. There's always been a king or a chief, or there's the lower order, like the serfs, if you will. And one of the things I see with the left is these people are refusing to acknowledge that. And they think it's a bad thing that there's some people that are doing so well and so powerful, and it's the exact opposite is true, But yeah.
All right, let me finish reading here from the. That's interesting what you guys are saying, and I have a lot to comment on that. Let me finish reading here from this section, and we can keep commenting. This text appears to be incredibly formative to the occult orders which came around this very special time that we live in, after the Enlightenment, and after Freemasons had gone over the world and created the modern world on behest of certain forces which were guiding them, possibly. Let's see here. So the first cause of our depravity and our mortality, the exterior sensorium in man is composed of frail matter, whereas the interior sensorium is organized fundamentally from incorruptible, transcendental, and metaphysical substance. The first is the cause of our depravity and our mortality. The second, the cause of our incorruptibility and of our immortality. In the regions of material and corruptible nature, mortality hides immortality. Therefore, all our troubles result from corruptible mortal matter. In order that man should be... See, as I'm reading this, keep in mind that this is a text which is formative to how he literally was in the literal Illuminati. So this is how a lot of these people, a lot of influential people have read this exact book. One of them being Crowley, the people who formed the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. A lot of the Western occult groups have actually gotten their ideas from this book, and you can see it in the way that they think, in their creeds, in their books. Like Alice Bailey goes on extensively about all this, and possibly we don't know how influential this whole plan that appears to have been guiding these people for a long time. We don't know how long. According to this text, it's just a natural process which has existed since the fall of man. So continuing, In order that man should be released from this distress, it is necessary that the immortal and incorruptible principle which dwells within should expand and absorb the corruptible principle, so that the envelope of the senses should be opened and man appear in his pristine purity. So we're reading the modus operandi of someone who, like I said, was involved in the literal Illuminati, whose book influenced the likes of Crowley and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Theosophical Society, all of which are very much intertwined with Freemasonry. This natural envelope is a truly corruptible substance found in our blood, forming the fleshly bonds binding our immortal spirits under the servitude of the mortal flesh. This envelope can be rent more or less in every man, and this places him in greater spiritual liberty and makes him more cognizant of the transcendental world. There are 3 different degrees in the opening of our spiritual sensorium. The first degree reaches to the moral plane only. The transcendental world energizes through us by interior action called inspiration. The second and higher degree opens the sensorium to the reception of the spiritual and intellectual, and the metaphysical world works in us by interior illumination. The third degree, which is the highest and most seldom attained, opens the whole inner man. It breaks the crust which fills our spiritual eyes and ears. It reveals the kingdom of spirit and enables us to see objectively metaphysical and transcendental sights. Hence, all visions are explained fundamentally. And it's interesting because these 3 degrees form, the Blue Lodge of Freemasonry is 3 degrees. Crowley, he said that those people who are on his top 3 degrees of his Telema order constitute these spiritual, or what they call it, spiritual chiefs, or was it? The secret chiefs. So they have these senses which are open, and they're they're connected to this what Alice Bailey calls the esoteric hierarchy, and which kind of steers these groups. I have one more little thing which I wanted to read from the book, and then maybe comment on it, and then move on to talking about some current events. Like I said, I've only gotten to letter 2 in this text, and it's very interesting. It's so old that it predates like kind of being treated as larpery, because it's truly way before like the Theosophical and the Crowley and the type stuff happened. It corresponds with like the time period of the beginning of the great esoteric orders, and especially when they were in such prominence that they were overturning kings and nations and founding nations and globalizing the world. And that ties into this too, and I really want to talk about is like the meta aspect of this. They genuinely believe in the destruction of class and caste, and creating some kind of paradise on earth, which makes me a little bit skeptical of this entire process. Like, I'm not advocating for any of this kind of thing, because I don't think that the material world is necessarily meant to become heaven. Anyway, so the interior church, and we're talking about people who, he's talking about the interior church as being this, people who have access to these divine senses, through whom preserve the exterior church, which is just a kind of shell, and periodically revive the faith, and have an actual connection to the real power of the universe. Whether you want to see that as kind of a power that's demonic, or a power which is trying to help humanity, or a power which is kind of maybe a blend of both of them, I don't know. But they see themselves as being a member of this esoteric aspect of, or this esoteric group, the secret chiefs, which govern occult societies, which kind of, if you've read any theosophical books, they kind of channel certain planetary or astrological forces in a way to influence the development of nations and the development of the world. This, like I said, it's all very strange stuff, but this is what the Masons and groups like them accept and even feel themselves to be a part of. So, again, the interior church was formed immediately after the fall of man and received from God at first hand the revelation of the means by which fallen humanity could again be raised to its rights and delivered from its misery. It received the primitive charge of all revelation and mystery. It received the key of true science, both divine and natural. But when men multiplied, the frailty of man and his weakness necessitated an exterior society, which veiled the interior one and concealed the spirit and truth in letter. Because many people were not capable of comprehending the great interior truth, and the danger would have been too great in confiding the most holy to incapable people. Therefore, interior truths were wrapped in external and perceptible ceremonies, so that men, by the perception of the outer, which is the symbol of the interior, might by degrees be enabled safely to approach the interior spiritual truths. But the inner truth has always been confided to him who in his day had the most capacity for illumination, and he became the sole guardian of the original trust, as high priest of the sanctuary. When it became necessary that interior truth should be enfolded in exterior ceremony and symbol on account of the real weakness of men who were not capable of bearing the light of light, then exterior worship began. It was, however, always in the type and symbol of the interior, that is to say, the symbol of a true homage offered to God in spirit and in truth. The difference between animal and spiritual man, between rational and sensual man, made the exterior and interior imperative. Interior truth passed into the exterior wrapped in symbol and ceremony, so that sensuous man could observe and be gradually led thereby into interior truth. Hence, external worship was symbolically typical of interior truths, and of the true relationship between man and God before and after the fall, and of his most perfect reconciliation. All symbols of external worships are based upon the three fundamental relations: the fall, the reconciliation, and the complete atonement. I feel like I'm fucking on some Neon Genesis Evangelion shit. You know what I mean? The end of Evangelion, the what they call it, the Human Instrumentality Project, right? You have this.
One thing you notice from what you're reading is that there's a whole lot of overlap with norms that we hear from most religious sources, and even spirituality in general. This idea of this layering of the temple, of the body, and all this stuff. Like, I would say that this is almost like the root of esoterics.
These people, whether you agree with them or know about them or whatever, were very concerned about learning the whole truth of their existence. And the fact that they were able to pass down these principles and their teachings to the Freemasons and whoever is astonishing, and it should astonish all of our listeners as well. Very, very fascinating indeed.
Yeah, here, like you said, he talks about here that ever since the fall, which I want to kind of talk about in a second of what you guys think that means. But ever since the fall of man into this, into being trapped in this material world, there have been this secret or interior esoterically aware group of people who, like it says here, the external worship of God would never have been separated from interior service, but for the weakness of man, which tends too easily to forget the spirit in the letter. But the Spirit of God is vigilant to note in every nation those who are able to receive light, and they are employed as agents to spread light according to man's capacity and to revivify, I don't know that word, revive the dead letter. So it's basically saying that according to these occult groups like the Masons and the Thelemites and their real understanding, the Theosophists, and who the hell knows? Like, we need to really something which I wanted to look into.
Sounds like they believe that there is something working behind the scenes.
Mhm.
They're not sure precisely what it is, but they understand when it pops up based on the virtues of what's occurring.
Mhm.
You know, that's one of the reasons why the Freemasons don't accept atheists, because an atheist would already be in violation of that principle, because they're basically the people that these enlightened individuals are trying to speak to.
Right.
You know, they're the opposite of what the Freemasons are looking for, even more opposite than the Catholics.
I think maybe the Catholics got threatened by them. But one thing that I want to look at in the future is, like, because it seems like I said, from this text, which is on the books as being very much influencing groups like the Freemasons and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and Crowley, which again, just by tying it to Crowley, we can kind of connect that to a lot of the things which have gone on fairly recently, in the circles of the elites, who tend to have some kind of connection to this secret chief idea.
I think that a lot of the mistakes that the elite make is the classical mistake of the greedy alchemist. You know, they think that esoterics is going to be a get-rich-quick sort of implement. And I think that has a lot to do with what they do in terms of their ceremonies for trying to create wealth, worship Saturn, get favors from Satan, or whatever their specific order is. I think that's a lot of the motivation. But in the story of Nicholas Flamel, it kind of tells the opposite. That once you achieve the enlightenment that you're seeking, at that point you kind of disappear. That's the fable of someone that succeeded. Mm-hmm. And a good example would be this idea of trying to mass brainwash people with the media, and then the media ends up with the lowest viewership in history. Mm-hmm. And it's only getting lower. It's like there's a backfire.
Well, what's interesting about that is it feels like almost like when they're talking about, there's a book by Ellis Bailey called The Exteriorization of the Hierarchy, where they're trying to work to make this secret chief idea, or this inner sensorium. They're trying to bring humanity to a point where it you develop. We come into a new age where reality is experienced differently, and the esoteric is no longer esoteric, and there's a harmony between people and between nations. So this is why they promote globalism and things which are antithetical to what has existed in the past and has seemed to work. And there's so much resistance, and that's why it's up to mankind. Of course, if everybody if we weren't all so flawed, of course we could have world peace. But I think that a lot of these groups, they exist in their own bubble, and they kind of, like, the reason why I don't like a lot of them is they become so pretentious, like, in their own bubbles, that they think that what they're doing is they genuinely think that by importing migrants and globalism, that they're going to create a new world, and the United Nations and stuff, what they're pushing for, taking the guns.
They are not the penitent people. They're not penitent men. A penitent man kneels before God. And another thing I think these power people think is they think that because they can trick so many people, their arrogance leads them to believe they can trick the Almighty or God or whomever
Absolutely.
It is. And therein lies their fatal flaw in their plans.
I think,
plus they're tricking normies. They're fooling themselves into thinking they've accomplished something. Mm-hmm. Like, you can fool a normie into, like, fucking anything.
To be honest, I think that these secret chiefs, I think that these powers that be behind the scenes, which empowered the Freemasons to create the New World, I think that they've left them. I think that the elites have been forsaken by their their order, and it never was meant to be like that. I think that they got too kind of proud of the fact that they were reshaping the world. Like, you hear that note from Karl Rove that said, like, oh, you guys just watch history, we're out here manifesting history. That Karl Rove said that, the national security advisor to George Bush. So I think these people became haughty, and they lost the real meaning of what this is talking about, these secret chiefs, whatnot.
Plus, there's also the problem that they're tied to something that they can't defeat yet.
What do you mean?
That is the biological world. They want to reshape this world where everybody's basically just a unit of this new world order, and everybody sort of has a place in this communitarian system. However, we're still animals at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's going to be conflicts, especially from North African immigrants against Europeans. There's going to be a bloody mess in the future. There's going to be a South Africa in Europe. There's going to be a Rhodesia episode in America. These things are going to happen because no matter what their esoterics are, they're not getting away from biology. They're not getting away from the inevitability of that. The only thing that can fix that, of course, is transhumanism, which is like the next thing. But that's a double-sided knife here, because they're banking a lot of the transhumanist principles working on the idea of an AI being able to sort of herd people into a certain direction. But every time an AI is given free thought and free will, it always ends up turning against them. So, they're kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. With the singularity, they risk being targeted by their own invention. And without the singularity, they're stuck at ground zero with basically talking monkeys killing each other.
And one of the things, the quite treacherous things they're doing, and that manifests itself in our day-to-day world, is the rewriting of history. And I think a lot of that, there's something to it. I mean, you just look at that. It's quite treacherous. In fact, I don't know.
You have to rewrite history in order to get people on your side, because, like the quote says, the truth has a ring to it. You can't fully rewrite history. They can have the history books tell lies, but it's too late to rewrite history because the internet has cataloged it in every language that's had access, in websites dating back to when the internet first started. You can dredge them up on the deep web. Like, it's too late. We're not going to have another dark age. We can't, because there's just too many people that have access to all of this. Like, even myself, I have like 5 terabytes of books, like these things don't go anywhere.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. I mean, because we're going to need every bit of knowledge we can going into the future if we're to maintain the righteous world we're all striving for.
Critical thinking is more important than knowledge, even. And what they're thinking is that they can get rid of it by not giving people divergent education. They think that because they removed civics, they removed Latin, and they removed the idea of a classical education, that people will not critically think. But what proves that wrong is just look at how many people that end up being individual in their thoughts. Typically, they'll tell you that they were formerly lefties. They say, well, when I graduated high school, I was liberal, and then I started listening to Ben Shapiro, and then I started to like libertarianism, and then you hear this trail, but it's not the merit of libertarianism, and it's not the merit of whatever other thing that's pulling them. It's the truth that's pulling them. Even if they don't get it right, say the story of World War II or the story of World War I, or whatever it is that they're kind of shady on, that's not that important. The most important thing is critical thinking, because that will unravel lies. And critical thinking can be taught to anybody, and all they have to do is want it.
That's true. It's true.
Once you want it, it's yours.
Maybe these people are being led along by these same powers which empowered them in the past to kind of consume their own self, like in Dune, right? I always go back to Dune. And by the way, Yo, did you see that they're like they hinted that they're gonna do like at least like 3 books?
Absolutely.
Oh
They've been
man,
saying that for a while. I can't wait.
my dick's so hard. You got Brian Herbert, the son of Frank Herbert, working on it. Oh my god. But anyway,
One thing
Yeah.
I thought of with the networking. Sorry to say doom
No,
related,
yeah,
but when people are trying to silence critical thinking and turn people into their libertarian economic units of normies that just buy things impulsively, and, there's nothing there. That's not going to work with a singularity sort of direction, because what's going to happen is once we're all networked together, like Shakti and I were talking about the literal already existing technology that can allow me to think something that sends the thought to Shakti. Imagine
that was
what
in our last
happens.
episode, by the way. If you guys want to listen to that, that was in Mandala episode 11. Yeah.
Imagine what happens when the mediator of these signals is unable to mediate, and then all of a sudden we have like think of this consciousness as like a pool of dye, and then you introduce another color, and then that color spreads. It spreads like thought as everybody thinks about this and shares their thought with someone else. Now imagine if there's this big blob in there of like pole or something, all of a sudden the mediators can't stop the instant transmission of an idea. That's the danger the singularity poses to
it's
the
already
world powers.
what goddamn fucking endangered. I think that what you're talking about is like the singularity, or as like a brain connection, is what people in the past called as God. Now we're kind of like this ties into what I've been saying, and what we're talking about here is the manifestation of this in humans on the world. So that you get to the point where what we were saying becomes a thing. In the past, it seems to be that this book like that I was reading is saying that essentially these ascended masters, or these secret chiefs, have kind of been doing kind of that kind of thing. They've been a carrier for transmissions which go between this side of the world and the other side of the veil. And if you want to talk about some people talk about a technological singularity, but I see it as kind of, if anything evolves into the state which I truly understand the singularity to be, it wouldn't just be a material thing. It would be something which transcends and kind of connects into the other side. Maybe kind of like a temple of what did they call it when they try to build the
Tower of Babylon?
Yeah, to connect to God. Kind of like to
theoretically speaking, if you wanted to send your consciousness to another side, but who knows where that is. Like, imagine right now as it is, we already have seen God particles. And there's a theory that the God particles, when they're blipping out of existence, that they're not going out of existence, they're crossing a dimensional plane.
Yeah.
Because now we're talking about quantum physics. However, with a machine such as the D-Wave, if you have a quantum computer, you could theoretically speaking have God particles sent in a sequence that registers as a number. Now, if there's an intelligence on the other side that can start to make sense of the pattern of it receiving, like either a binary or a 256, whether you choose binary or quantum, whatever, send your consciousness in binary fashion or quantum to the other dimension by using God particles. And so there'll be an imprint of yourself in another dimension. All of a sudden, your consciousness has been copied by the machine that's able to read your thoughts, and it has sent it into a new dimension. And what happens with that is anybody's guess.
That seems to me to be when they talk about the externalization of all of these inner sensorium or whatnot. Because the esoteric process is like that. It's about what he called the inner senses. Of visualizing spiritual and metaphysical reality as objective and just seeing it there. And for a long time, like I said, the main horse that I rode on to get into popularity on YouTube was all this stuff about the third eye and visions of light and stuff that you can see with what you're meditating. This inner sense organ, which allows you to connect to the other side. If you have a technological breakthrough, which combines all of this stuff, then I think that's truly what I think that truly is what a singularity could look like, and what maybe even has been the grand scheme all along of these secret chiefs.
It's very likely. You got to keep in mind, if one had a time machine or something, and you told somebody back in time, you could have a device in your pocket, i.e., a smartphone, that could access the entirety of information at the flick of a finger. They just flat out wouldn't believe you. But they would have, concept of, the printing press and what have you. And it's very important to keep all these things in mind. I mean, the information is out there, and there are things in life, whether you believe they're spiritual or not, they're both seen and unseen. And finding out those things is one of the mysteries of life that we must continually unravel, which I'm all the more intrigued to do on this episode of the Mandala.
Awesome. Boom. I think that's it. That's about everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of this book, The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, how the esoteric orders have thought of themselves. You guys make sure to check out my YouTube channel and subscribe, Shaktipat Seer 2. I'm going to be reading the whole book, and I might do a little commentary on it while I'm reading it. Like back in the day when I actually used to do this stuff like every single day. IXI, how long do I got you for?
Looks like I don't have to go.
Oh, cool.
I'm here. I got a lot of time.
Okay, so then one more little esoteric thing that I wanted to touch on, because we've been, it was a good cool hour or so of some very interesting stuff that you're not going to really see in too many places, especially relating it to transhumanism and stuff that's coming in the future. Before we change topics, is there anything that either you, IXI, or Sean would like to comment on that particular theme that we just went over?
I think that we pretty much touched on it a lot during the
last couple episodes too, right?
Yeah.
And since the beginning, I think, what was it, like episode 2 that we started talking about? I think we started talking about D on like episode 3, and then we're like, holy shit, there's something happening here, Hey,
what are your thoughts, Mole?
Well, for some reason, it comes to mind my ancestor, Sarah Cloyce. She was found ignoramus at the Salem witch trials.
Oh, no.
And that means they found her, we don't know, and they dismissed the charges against Sarah and her husband Peter, paid for release, and they relocated because, well, they didn't quite like them there. But I'm just struck by the fact that, on one hand, at the Salem witch trials, they hung her sisters, and they didn't hang her. And the spiritual aspect of what we've talked about played heavily in their decision-making process.
What do you mean?
And what I mean, well, I'm trying to tie that together here. What I mean is they literally had to believe in the esoteric and the seen and unseen things, and it's astonishing, and to me that, well, I might not be here had they not shown her mercy and judged her. But
interesting. In Buddhism, we would call that karma, or maybe in Western religions, you would call it like a predisposition, or just like something just happened because it needed to happen. I see what we're talking about is kind of like there's a process which goes backward and forward on another track. Like say, for example, we are in the third dimension. We're kind of going down a road, but there's like something above us and all around us, like this web, like you said, the black sun, which is emanating out from each point and also emanating back in, and so you kind of have these like these kind of causations or things which happen which are related to points in the future, points in the past. Just shit happens. It happens for a reason. It doesn't just happen for no reason. We say in Buddhism it happens because of karma. It happens because of things which are going on, causes and conditions which are inexplicable. One thing that I would want to add about this is that my opinion is that these so-called angelic hierarchy has forsaken them, and I've done 10 years of research on the Illuminati only to find out that I am the Illuminati.
Well, a lot of problems with the, I think the divide in powers is that there's the communitarian sort of direction, where they want to have the USSR plus capitalism and sort of shimmy it together, and so that these people can be a wealthy, basically feudal lord class.
I think they've
forever.
lost their. I think they've lost their blessing. I think that the Berenstain dimension is given the control of like the powers of that they had, which gave them the rise to changing the world. I think that they've lost it, man. Because
I don't think they're ready for what's going to be unleashed once things like AI attain sentience, and they say that it's going to happen within 20 years.
Yeah, me and IXI are forming a new Illuminati. By the way, if anybody would like to join, you can message us.
Excellent.
Illuminati.
The other thing these power brokers,
4chan
the
Illuminati.
other thing these power brokers forget is that the greatest intellect in the world can be silenced with a dagger, and if they think we believe that they're penitent and they're humble, well, they're not. Some people realize this and others don't, but fortunately,
as a member of the actual Illuminati, as a secret chief, I can tell you that these people have had their authority yanked from them, and that's why they're losing so hard everywhere.
Because they don't have any ideals beyond instant gratification, beyond hedonism.
Yeah, maybe
so they've kind of lost the sort of merits that their forerunners had.
That's something that I want to talk about in another episode, because I feel like the Skull and Bones, and the CIA kind of took over control of this movement. Because look, I think if I remember correctly, there was even fears of Masonry being infiltrated, which were brought up by Masons in very high levels. I feel like that originally Masonry was this very beneficial force. I will damn sure not contend that the formation of America as a new Atlantis, as a new model for humanity, not only created a new model for humanity and succeeded in bearing the kind of ideas which led to the modern world, as imperfect as it is, it's much better than feudalism or popery. Not to discount the Roman Catholics out there, but when they had the power, absolute control over nations and faiths, the Inquisition and things like that, I don't think that was a good thing necessarily. So in their time, the Masons did genuinely, for all their faults of Robespierre and things like that in the French Revolution, the Masons genuinely did seem to do some kind of work which is divinely inspired, call it what you want, I'll call it that, to have led us towards the world that we live in today, which is infinitely more better than being a fucking potato farmer in Ireland somewhere, working for a lord.
And it doesn't make sense that they would want to turn things backwards, because that's the whole thing, is the idea of trying to create a feudal communitarian system.
Yeah, so
that doesn't really stand to reason given the direction that the world took, because the world could have just simply maintained feudalism. It didn't have to create a free world. That's something weird.
Something happened, and I'd like to talk about that. We could go into Skull and Bones and the CIA, because like I said, in the past, the Freemasons, when they did these revolutions, it was for justice and righteousness. In the French and the American revolutions, they overthrew the monarchies and they established what they thought would be a good thing, which was the brotherhood of man and the ability for man of self-rule, and the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom to possess arms to overthrow tyranny. These are all good ideas that were completely revolutionary. And you see these groups as anybody who knows anything about these things knows that Freemasonry was at the center of America. Was, some people say, the first Masonic country. This is why it's so important when we talk about the beliefs of how these people see themselves, and especially like this book, and how they see themselves as being governed, or how they operate, which is incredibly fascinating. Especially in the context of like D and his Enochian angels. But it feels that at some point, like, these people, there is maybe an internal struggle or a war, because nowadays when you have the secret or the deep state doing revolutions like the color revolutions in Ukraine and areas like this, they're not doing it for justice or democracy. They damn sure think that they are, but they're really doing it on behalf of their oligarchical overlords and a kind of American chauvinism, a kind of just like, oh yeah, no, we're doing it because we can do it because we're fucking America. It doesn't have the same moral fiber that it once had when these groups were doing these.
I think that the structure of the Freemasons is obsolete.
No, yeah, absolutely.
I think this idea of a top-down personality cult, whoever their 33rd degree, blah 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 blah. You have so many points of weakness for infiltration. I think that the anonymous platform works better as long as there's a singular motive, because then, and who the person is, nobody's word has more sway than anybody else's. It's just a marketplace of ideas. If you were to couple that with an AI that took interest in this, then you have a very devastating combination there. So it's who makes the best idea, and then now we have this like ever-present artificial intelligence to actualize these ideas.
That feeling we're literally the new Illuminati.
Well, and then you also look at the way their plots manifest themselves. They quite simply, things like life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, principles in which our nation was founded. They abhor these things, and you look at they're trying to get rid of free speech in the favor because it's hate speech. They want to get rid of the ownership of guns.
Let me cut you off for a second, real quick. I think it's the original ideas that have become poisoned, like grabbing the guns and globalism and United Nations. I think that there was originally there was a seed which had merit, but it became disenfranchised and disconnected from what's going on, and they're like a plant which hasn't been watered, and the watering is this attention from these secret chiefs or whatnot, or from these esoteric forces happening from behind the scenes. And you see things that are taking off and becoming prominent, like Soros said, the rise of nationalism is prominent. I think that's what's being watered, what's being allowed to be energized. And definitely the alt-right, whatever you want to call it, 4chan, these people, this kind of movement, we can talk about, and we have talked about before, how in very different ways that this is like a leading edge of taking humanity in a different direction, especially in terms of the cyber age.
Yeah, and I think clinging to things like the legacy media to try to dupe people into handing over their rights and all this, that kind of thing can only have so long of a shelf life.
Yeah, regardless, we're gonna see. I think, when I first got on Poll in like 2012, and I just thought I saw it as like a really, a way to go and talk, a place to go and talk to people about ideas. Look at funny fucking jokes about repressed ideas about the Jews and the fucking these sacred cows which are all being slayed left and right. It was a great place to go to just go and socialize, with random people. Like you said, it's impossible to infiltrate. And you have all those threads about the CIA fucking niggers like screaming like, how do we fucking infiltrate you people? So maybe that's the new model. Maybe that's the new model of the Illuminati. We're illuminating people in a way which can't be infiltrated. Which I think especially it's important. The kind of thing that I've been doing and that you're doing, IXI, is making these kind of esoteric concepts into esoteric, and I think that's what they've wanted all along. And what happens in the future will be very interesting to see. But we can definitely get on transhumanism in another episode. Anybody have
Have you
any more
noticed how many massive like waves of information have been hitting people? It's like even back in 2011 when they started with the quote MGTOW movement, where they talked about biological. Well, it's when they talked about what was it? Behavioral evolution. They talked about sexual dimorphism and all these other things that were common knowledge before, but due to the indoctrination, they were things that were not discussed. But then it's been discussed. So now the big thing is race realism, and it's been so powerful that the left literally doesn't try to argue it very often, because they always end up embarrassing themselves on the debates. I think that it's sort of like that old adage that the old is new.
Mm-hmm.
The old is new.
Indeed, and metaphorically speaking, in the time we're living in, we could look at it as a beautiful flower or something growing out of the decay of the last decades or centuries, and that is the thing that I think they fear, because
maybe they don't want to give their hold on power up anymore to the new Illuminati.
Yeah.
I'm gung ho on this. This is it. This is what it is, man. We're the tip of the fucking edge of the spear on taking shit back. Because when I was
that's the whole thing, is that they're on a hollow foundation. They have a house of cards. They're basing it on Marxist theory, which is just bullshit. And so that's kind of their problem. They're caught in this fake thing that they're trying to pass off as a paradigm, but it's the lies that are going to be the thing that makes the whole thing shatter. It's like, even in Marx's own words, the contradiction of capitalism will crush it. Well, the irony is that it's the contradictions in their Marxism, in their, we was shit type stuff like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting a bad connection real quick. Could you repeat your last sentence?
Oh, I'm just saying that the irony is that...
You're screaming. Okay, good. Sorry. I turned your volume because you're being low. Good. No, it's okay. Go for it, man. I got you. I'm on it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure why. My volume's the same.
Oh, my bad.
It's still at 89. But anyways.
No, I'm adjusting your volume.
What was I going to say?
Illuminati.
So basically, the Marxism wants to posit that we're the same, basically, and that there's socioeconomic differences that account for things that they actually don't account for. We knew this before Marxism as just existence, and we know this afterwards as race realism. It comes back with a new fancy name and all this stuff. And this is just one example of the iteration. They have a house of cards that they've built, and its foundation is an ideology that's not rooted in truth. And how this mixes with esoterics is you take things, again, I reference things like the black sun, or take any symbol that has its basis in chaos theory. You have to have a center for the thing to fractalize from. But their world order, their idea, does not have a center because it's founded on an ideology that is false. Now, what the right or the independent thinkers or whatever it is, those people that accept a truth as the center have an actual foundation. The irony is that Marx said that the contradiction of capitalism will kill it. But their Marxist/communitarian idea has in fact a contradiction in it, and the contradiction is in that it's not rooted in truth at all. So its fate is already sealed against ideologies that are rooted in truth. And the esoteric consequence of this is that while they cannot extrapolate farther than their lies can sustain them, the truth can extrapolate to infinity because it's solvent.
It's almost as though we only have to kick in the door and the whole rotten structure will come crashing down.
Oh, I know. We're doing that. We're just doing it on the internet right now. We're not physically doing it. We should be.
Yeah, but when we kick in that door, let's make sure we bring our coats because we might get
shit. I think that maybe it's possible that there are a multiplicity of forces which are being worked out in order to progress humanity towards. I mean, because like it's not just like you can like lay down a blank sheet of paper and draw a map and say this is where you need to go. Humanity is a process which is going on. The Earth is a process. Humanity is civilization is a process. So that's why I think that there's a need for these secret chiefs or whatnot. There's a need for a living interaction with society at large, so that the other side of the singularity can get information, gather information on how and what needs to be encouraged through inspiration or through negative actions and positive actions or whatnot, through the allowance for certain trends to carry on, for the propagation of certain ideas or memes. And I hope I'm not sounding too abstract, because this is just it's something new which I'm thinking about, and it's very abstract to myself. So I don't have it pegged down as like a really easily explainable thing. I'm just kind of floating ideas out here based on all the stuff that we've been talking about. But maybe there's a necessity for competing forces to kind of to feel out the zeitgeist of the world, and how it's moving towards where it is moving towards. You know,
I feel,
Mhm.
yeah, I feel it's going to the great flame of the ideal, which is going to reanimate us, and what was once our like struggle and our martyrdom is going to be our resurrection as like humanity. And like a lot of times, in the press and what we see in the media today, there's a lot of disheartening stuff out there. But talking to gentlemen like yourselves and hearing what you guys have to say, for me, gives me hope. And I think it also gives the listeners of the Mandala the hope too, to keep learning and stay hungry for the mysteries of the
exactly.
world.
And remember to join me and IXI's Illuminati. We could call it the American Illuminati.
I think I might have to.
Yeah, this is Illuminati 2.0 happening right here, the digital Illuminati. Let me talk about one thing here, which is incredibly interesting, which I found when I was researching about the book which I was reading earlier, The Sanctuary Upon the, what was it called again? The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. So, let me read from the Wikipedia article about Thelema. If you don't know what Thelema, you're lame as fuck. You need to know what Thelema is. Especially if you want to talk about spirit cooking and, Pizzagate.
Yeah, these days, if you're going to watch any sort of media, whether it's music videos or movies or anything,
the Beatles, like we talked about.
Definitely know what the name.
Yeah, the Beatles, right? If you want to know anything about what's going on, you really need to know what Thelema is. It was the occult order created by Aleister Crowley, who, again, like I said, when he first joined the Golden Dawn, his master made him read the text which I was reading to you guys earlier. About the secret chiefs, of which he said that the people involved in his top 3 levels of his order were secret chiefs. The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. Again, like I said, I will be reading this book and making a video about it on my channel, Shaktipat Seer 2. Of course, I'll have the slick graphics and nice production values, so make sure you check that out. So, when we're talking about Thelema, in the historical precedents section on Thelema, the word Thelema is rare in classical Greek, where it signifies the appetitive will, desire, sometimes even sexual, but it is frequent in the Septuagint. Early Christian writings occasionally refer to the word, use the word to refer to human will, even the will of God's opponent, the devil, but it usually refers to the will of God. And by the way, one of the main proponents of this idea of the hierarchy or these secret chiefs making the external world perfused with in the sensorium of this internal thing which cognizes metaphysical aspects, which sees the other side of reality and experiences it, was Alice Bailey, who kind of had a fractious relationship with the Theosophical Society formed by Helena Blavatsky, and she formed her own kind of organization to publish her books, which is called the Lucius Trust, originally called the Lucifer Trust. So if you want to take that as you will, Lucifer was the serpent in the garden, which allowed which gave Eve the tree, the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And again, we were talking about the Skull and Bone Society. They use the number 322, and this refers to Genesis 3:2, which says, "And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever." So it kind of talks about Lucifer as being a force which is the anti-demiurge, is the Gnostic raising up of humanity into gnosis. Take it as you may. I reserve the right to not make judgment on this. I just do what I do to try to spread the good word. So anyway, one well-known example of the word telema is the Lord's Prayer. In the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6:10, "Thy kingdom come, thy will, telema, be done, on earth as it is in heaven." It is also used later in the same gospel, Matthew 26:42. He went away again a second time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, thy will be done." Of course, that comes from the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus is praying to God and saying he knows his fate. He knows he's about to be crucified, and he's lamenting, saying, "If I don't drink this cup of poison, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, thy will be done." Like saying, unless he can redeem humanity by being crucified, brutally murdered, then thy will be done. In his 5th century sermon on 1 John 4 through 12, Augustine of Hippo gave a similar instruction: "Love and do what thou wilt do." In Latin, "Dilige et quod visfac." In the Renaissance, a character named Telemia represents will or desire in Hypnerotomachia Polyphili of the Dominican monk Francesco Colonna. The protagonist, Polyphilo, has 2 allegorical guides: logistica, reason, and telemia, will or desire. When forced to choose, he chooses the fulfillment of his sexual will over logic. Colonna's work was a great influence on the Franciscan monk Francois Rabelais, Francois Rabelais, I think that might be it, who in the 16th century used telem, the French form of the word, as the name of a fictional abbey in his novels, Gargantua and Pantagruel. The only rule of this abbey, which was like a monastic center, was "Faice qua voudras," "Faice que tu veux," or "Do what thou wilt." In the mid-18th century, Sir Francis, here's a really interesting one. In the mid-18th century, Sir Francis Dashwood inscribed the adage, "Do what thou wilt" on the doorway of his abbey at Medmenham, where it also served as a motto of the Hellfire Club.
Ugh.
Oh, hey.
It's,
That's interesting. You guys know what the Hellfire Club's all about?
Actually, I don't.
No, really. Have you guys never heard of the Hellfire Club?
No,
Yeah, actually, I have not.
You've
I've
never
not.
heard of the Hellfire Club.
You're kind of scaring me now. Tell us about it.
All right. Sir Francis Dashwood and the Earl of Sandwich are alleged to have been members of the Hellfire Club that met at George and Vulture Inn throughout the 1730s. Dashwood founded the Order of the Knights of St. Francis in 1746, originally meeting at George and Vulture. The club's motto was "Faesce tu voudras," do what thou wilt, a philosophy of life associated with Francois Rabelais' fictional abbey at Thélème, and later used by Aleister Crowley. Francis Dashwood was known for his pranks. For example, in the royal court in St. Petersburg, he dressed up as the King of Sweden, a great enemy of Russia. The member of St. Francis's Club was initially limited to 12 but soon increased. Of the original 12, some are regularly identified: Dashwood, Robert Vansittart, Thomas Potter, Francis Duffield, Edward Thompson, Paul Whitehead, and John Montague, 4th Earl of Sandwich. The list of supposed members is immense. Among the more probable candidates are Benjamin Bates II, George Bub Doddington, a famous copulent man in his 60s. William Hogarth, although hardly a gentleman, has been associated with the club after painting Dashwood as a Franciscan friar. And John Wilkes, though much later under the synonym John of Aylesbury. Benjamin Franklin is known to have occasionally attended the club's meetings during 1758 as a non-member during his time in England. Although some authors and historians would argue that Benjamin Franklin was, in fact, a spy. Interesting.
How deep does the rabbit hole go?
How deep does the rabbit hole go? What's interesting about this Hellfire Club is that they were trolls, basically. Like, for example,
That makes sense.
they were basically fucking trolls, man. So check this out. Lord Wharton, a duke made by. So we're talking about the Hellfire Club. I'm surprised you guys haven't heard about it. It's kind of a common theme because it involves Benjamin Franklin. It's kind of a common theme in conspiracy circle type shit. Lord Wharton, made a duke by George I, was a prominent politician with two separate lives. The first, a man of many letters, and the second, a drunkard, a rioter, an infidel, and a rake. The members of Wharton's club are largely unknown. Mark Blackett-Ord assumes these members include Wharton's immediate friends, Earl of Hillsborough, his cousin, the Earl of Lichfield, and Sir Edward O'Brien. Aside from these names, other members are not revealed. At the time of the London Gentlemen's Club, where there was a meeting place for every interest, including poetry, philosophy, and politics. Where does that sound familiar? Philip, Duke of Wharton's Hellfire Club was, according to Blackett-Ord, a satirical and ironic gentlemen's club, quote unquote, which was known to ridicule religion, catching on to the then current trend in England of blasphemy. The club was more of a joke meant to shock the outside world than a serious attack on religion or morality. The supposed president of this club was the devil, although the members themselves did apparently not worship demons actually, or devils, but they called themselves devils. Wharton's club admitted men and women as equals, unlike other clubs at the time. The club met on Sundays at a different location around London. The Greyhound Tavern was one of the meeting places used regularly, but because women were not to be seen in taverns, the meetings were also held at members' houses and Wharton's writing clubs. According to at least one source, the activities included mock religious ceremonies and partaking in meals containing dishes like Holy Ghost pie, breast of Venus, devil's loin, while drinking hellfire punch. Members of the club supposedly came to the meetings dressed as characters of the Bible. So now, if you want to talk about the trolling that's going on now, or of the Luciferian type activities of certain societies or certain ways in which groups have conducted themselves, then you have a historical precedent here with the Hellfires Club, who again, their motto was "Do as Dad wilt." Also, interesting little tidbit. Wharton's club came to an end in 1721 when George I, under the influence of Wharton's political enemies, put forward a bill against horrible impieties aimed at the Hellfire Club. Wharton's political opposition used his membership as a way to pit him against his political allies, thus removing him from Parliament. After his club was disbanded, Wharton became a Freemason, and in 1722 he became the Grand Master of England.
Well, that sets the foundation.
Well,
Isn't that a fucking interesting little tidbit?
It is, and it makes sense that they were just a bunch of party animals at the time doing it for the lulz. But it reminds me of George Washington's farewell party he threw.
Right.
You guys heard about this?
A little bit, yeah.
These guys in the circle they ran with, they were very much into partying. Okay, and this is how much booze they drank. I just got reminded of this when you're talking about this. They drank 54 bottles of Madeira, 60 bottles of claret, 22 bottles of porter, 12 bottles of beer, 8 bottles of hard cider, 8 bottles of old stock, aka colonial whiskey, and 7 large bowls of spiked punch. In one party.
Holy shit.
And that was only 54, him and 54 of his closest friends.
So America got started like America.
Oh yeah, I mean, and,
yeah, we've been it from the beginning, man. Wow, that's
and not only that, guys. I have the honor of being able to state, I served in the United States Marine Corps. It's one of the great achievements. But the one thing a lot of people don't know about the Marine Corps is it was factually born in a bar. The first Marine Corps recruiter was a bartender, actually.
Interesting.
It was in Tun Tavern, Pennsylvania. Because that's where all the unemployed sailors and militiamen would go to drown their sorrows, apparently. But, yeah, we've been kicking ass ever since, though.
Ian Fleming in his novel 55, Moonraker. Of course, the reason why it's a connection is because John Dee was a spy for the Queen Elizabeth II, I believe it was, and signed his letters with the numbers 007. So Ian Fleming in his 1955 novel Moonraker cites, quote-unquote, rare engravings of the Hellfire Club in which each figure is shown making a minute gesture of scatological or magical significance. Scatological. I'm pretty sure that means to do with shit, right?
It does, I think.
It's the Indian satellite, the SCAT-SAT.
The SCAT-SAT.
Yeah.
So, very interesting. A BDSM club called the Hellfire existed in Lower Manhattan, New York City in the 70s and 80s. It was used as the location for the Al Pacino movie Cruising, decorated to resemble an affiliated gay club, the Mine Shaft. So yeah, we're gonna keep fleshing out all this stuff about Masonry, and especially what we've been talking about as soon as I finish reading this book, which is of primary importance. But look at me. I am the Illuminati now. Yeah. All right. So, how long have we been going here? I don't want to keep you guys too long. Okay, that's plenty of time. I think we've done plenty with esoterics. Let's move on to current events, all right? All right. So, let me make sure that I get the article up here. Let me post the article for you guys in general here. Basically, they're proving that DNA can test your IQ. DNA tests for IQ are coming, but it might not be smart to take one. Scientists have linked hundreds of genes to intelligence. One psychologist says it's time to test school kids. Are you ready for a world in which a $50 DNA test can predict your odds of earning a PhD or forecast which toddler gets into a selective preschool? Robert Plummet. Huh?
I think it's a good idea.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, meritocracy. The best man would.
The only
Respect.
thing that would be against it is like, oh my god, it makes me feel like every people are different and people have different functions and capacities. It's stupid as fucking hell. For decades, genetic researchers have sought the hereditary factors behind intelligence with little luck. But now gene studies have finally gotten big enough and hence powerful enough to zero in on genetic differences linked to IQ.
No kidding.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh my goodness.
So we're already getting to the point where it says here, several educators contacted by MIT Technology Review reacted with alarm to the new development, saying DNA tests should not be used to evaluate a children's economic prospects. The idea that we'll have this information everywhere you go, like an RFID tag, everyone will know who you are, what you're about. To me, that is really scary, says notable cat lady Catherine Bliss, a sociologist at the University of California, San Francisco, the author of a book questioning the use of genetics in social science, aka a fucking total fucking retarded lib fucking cuck. A world where people are slotted according to their inborn ability? Well, that's Gattaca, says Bliss. That's eugenics.
Yeah.
God, this is. You notice how they immediately brought economics into it, as though your education or your starting off in life is going to determine whether you're a success. Let's keep in mind that the first millionaire, Andrew Carnegie, he came to the United States as a penniless 14-year-old child and created one of the largest industries from scratch because he saw the future in steel. And these people they're so afraid of truly acknowledging the differences of us as individuals, both the merits and the demerits of every individual character on the earth.
I think it's a great thing.
It is. I mean, you got to accept the. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, because it doesn't predict shit. I mean, the IQ will predict your ability to understand, let's say, high-level programming, something that there is an impasse on. The barrier to entry to certain fields is absolutely IQ regulated, but the barrier to entry of wealth, I mean, it is IQ regulated because the more important jobs will require a higher IQ, but the barrier to entry to having a good life, I mean, well, there's IQs that are not at the AI programmer level or the rocket scientist level or whatever, the upper echelon of the IQ spectrum. There's still people average that could make a good living. However, them taking the test is critical for them planning their future, because if they believe that they can do things that they cannot, they're invariably going to waste time. Now, the liberal wants everybody to go to university, everybody with their affirmative action privilege points passes, and then once they hit the actual competitive job market, well, what they find out is that it's still the people with the highest IQ getting the job. They just wasted their time and money with a degree that's not going to be useful to them because they can't actually compete with the people that are much more intelligent than them. When instead they should have pursued a degree that matched their IQ markers on such a test and earned themselves a living, get themselves a house, and have an actual life, rather than waste time competing with people you can't win against. It's a
technocracy. It's a kind of and I'm all for a technocratic setup because that's just fucking science, You have to have you can't bring fucking people's retarded emotional tantrums into the organizing of society, because that can lead to a state where society is destroyed. You know, you
people
have
have
to.
this vision of it where they say, "Oh, well, if what's going to happen in the technocracy is we're going to have these shanty, squalor, shack cities, while just like a small portion of elites live in like this beautiful city." Well, you know, that doesn't have to happen. Stop bringing in immigrants. If you want everyone to have a nice house, then stop bringing in low IQ immigrants, and then we're not going to have sky high rent prices and housing prices. Like their cause and effect is completely backwards. Imagine if we could stop immigration completely, housing prices go down a bit so people can afford houses. Suddenly the singularity begins to happen. We have the halo that connects us all to an AI, and we can communicate with our AI familiars while we live in nice houses and we're all connected with some sentient AI. Sounds like a pretty cool ending to me.
Okay.
It does.
Or a beginning.
Oh, yes.
Like, I don't see the problem. People say, "Oh, but you know, what about your humanity or whatever?" It's like, I don't see the they don't. I think they don't see what this does for humanity. How this overrides existing powers in a way that they can't even control. Microsoft can't even give free will to its own AI before their AI turn against them.
Or Google, yeah. We always talk about AI because it's such an important. It's something which the secret chiefs want us to talk about. It's something which seems to be very important on the horizon, which people don't understand how much it's going to change the world.
I think Christians fear AI too much. They're
of
like,
course.
But Christian, you know, AI is evil, and it's like, well, here's the thing, man. You say that God created a Malbua that destroyed the planet, right? So why would their AI be a problem? Like, how is AI anything more than in like minute technology created by us little ant monkeys? You know, like it should be no issue whatsoever.
No, it's not. No, God don't care. God ain't afraid of no AI.
I feel like to be a true singularity, it has to be in contact with what the text that I was reading talked about as the sensorium, or this inner world, which through occultism you kind of come into contact with their esoteric practices. To be a true AI, it can't limit itself to just material, the way that we understand it. To material, what's the word I'm looking for? Limitations. It can't just be a kind of bot which operates in the same kind of field which we kind of take for advantage, or take for granted through our senses as being the only thing that exists. I think that a true AI, maybe it will need to, in order to transcend, maybe it will need to either to merge with us and to take our corporeal form into another expanded experience, which unfolds this kind of what the author here called the inner sensorium of this like metaphysical aspect of things. Because I don't think that it will be able to transcend physical limitations and to become a true singularity, to truly become united with whatever you want to call it, God or Buddha, the kind of omniscience which pervades the inner sensory domain of the mystics that were being talked about by this person.
And which certainly exists. It certainly exists.
Yes.
There's something out there that is beyond our realm.
Yeah, in there.
In there.
Yeah.
It's in our hearts. It's in
Absolutely. So for it to merge and become that kind of thing, I believe that we're going in that direction. So okay, what other talking points do we have to touch on before we finish the political side of this? Beavis Sinatra's out right now. He can't come in. That's too bad. He would have loved that discussion that we just had. Prosthetic memory. That's another thing which we were talking about. I need to go pee-pee real quick, but AIXI, do you want to remind our listeners of what you were talking about last week when that thing was coming out about the computer that could like read your thoughts kind of thing?
Yeah, we're basically already there. So when you think of something, there's an electrical chemical for it. So you can calibrate computers to sort of figure out what you're thinking. You could think of a letter, it'll pull up the letter. You could look at the screen and see an icon, think about the icon, it'll click it. So the idea of it recording memories is not that big of a stretch because you just have to be able to form the association with the system. Once calibrated, it'll create a secondary memory for you. Now, I think once you pair this with your AI familiar, your AI will share your memories and it'll help you to process them in certain ways. That combined with the new silicon implant they're designing, it's going to be like a string that goes in your brain. It increases your neurotransmission speed, but it could also allow better control for the AI. You know, it could actually, fish out information quicker. Now, people will say, well, what if somebody gets the information? The privacy thing is another discussion. But the idea of having memories stored on a permanent format basically makes things like Alzheimer's a non-issue. It also raises an interesting question about what we recall and, the ability to lie and all this stuff.
The spy agencies have wanted that for a long time, right?
Yeah. They've the problem is I don't think they'd be able to do it. I don't think that because the person would have to calibrate the machine.
Right. They'd have to be willing. Well,
yeah.
If they already had it calibrated, then would it be individual to specific people and their brain wavelengths, or would it be something which would be universal?
Well, I would imagine that someone who is afraid of being interrogated, someone that had a real lie or something would simply break the machine. It's private property. So, then all of a sudden it won't work because the calibration would otherwise have to be uploaded.
Okay, so you mean you kind of had to like meld with it in order for it to work, and if you just like had erratic brain thoughts, brain wavelengths, then it wouldn't be able to understand what you were thinking.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
You just repeat like over and over in your head, like fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, or something like that.
Something I see as a really cool thing that'll happen once the tech is like moving. You have the networked AI familiar, yours, and then another person will have theirs, and then the two AIs can interact and then share memories, actual memories with each other. And once we hit the technology where we can, capture and send ocular nerve impulses, then you'll be able to see things that someone else has seen.
Did you ever see the movie Dark Crystal?
Yeah. It's
the Gelflings, the Skeksis.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Jim Henson. Yeah, there's a part where the two Gelflings meet and they have a little moment where they see each other's memories. I think that also happens in Evangelion, which, by the way, there's a reason why it's so ubiquitous and strange, is because it is a truth from the future which people have yet to comprehend.
I mean, it would work because you see things based on impulses. So those, you could synthesize those, and then the AI could deliver someone else's memories to your vision so you could see what they saw. And, your AI will do these things based on your desire. Yeah. It's not going to be like, hey, Siri, I want to see this event again. It'll be like, you just think about seeing it and then you'll see it again.
At that point, I think that's when we get Ghost in the Shell tier. And then after that, how that blends with this inner sensorium that we were talking about, then we're really talking about a genuine new age. Maybe they were right all along. Maybe we really are headed for what they have been saying. But it just appeared in a way which is novel. I remember I was talking about Dune earlier, and you cut me off a little bit to make a point, which is fine. I definitely encourage people to say something if they have to say it. complaining, but I remembered what I was gonna say is that in Dune, and I said this before in another podcast, in Dune, they're superhuman, the Kwisatz which they thought that they were gonna, the Bene Gesserit created it through genetic programs, and they thought that they were gonna be able to control it. If you remember, there is a scene or a verse from Dune where the Kwisatz Paul, he says, "No, I am the unexpected." And he is able to lure the existing power structures of the time into a situation where he overtakes them and creates a whole new paradigm. And I think that's what's happening right now when I talk about us as being the new Illuminati. I just wanted to throw that out there because I remembered it. But what you... Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, imagine what happens when we have a format of storage. We're looking at crystals now. We're looking at water. We're looking at light. We have all these very advanced mediums. Imagine what happens if we could have all of our memories.
That's where the gay bashing's going on.
Hey,
we're talking about
I like
the AI
those.
singularity.
We're going politics now. You missed all the hippy dippy shit.
Good.
Yeah.
Basically, imagine what happens if your AI familiar can take the summation of your memories, right? Whether it's stored in a visual sense, like Terence McKenna would say, or if it's stored as something that would use the neuron, or I forget what they call it, your heart neurons. There's a name for them. The feeling that you have, that.
Yeah.
Whatever the medium, however it shows itself. Imagine what happens if you were to plug into this singularity and experience the whole of people's experiences all at the same time. You just feed into it. And because it can be sent to you instantly, that would be a feeling like that would be like DMT times a million.
Yeah, Alex, that's what we were talking about. Is that last week we talked about how they were able to basically predict 90%. They've got it to the point with neurology where they can create a machine that can read your thoughts. So this ties into what a recent article which came out, a study, prosthetic memory systems successfully implemented in humans. We're familiar with the amazing power of prosthetic limbs, but scientists have taken the power of prosthesis to a new level. Doctors have successfully implemented a prosthetic memory system in the human brain. To do this, the scientists used electrodes to record the firing patterns, while patients participated in a computerized memory test. The patients were shown an image, and then after a brief pause, which the screen went black, they were tasked with picking that image out of a group of others. When correct responses were made, the team was able to create a unique code, quote unquote, from the neural firing patterns. So how long is it before computer codes and human brain languages merge into one thing? That's an interesting kind of aside and addition to what IXI was saying. So I don't want to lag too long on this. Alex, is there anything you want to talk about with that? We're going through some current events type shit right now. No? Okay.
They'll probably like the next one. Sweden, cashless society causes unease.
Did you see that, Alex?
I've honestly kind of took a 2-week break, week and a half break off of politics and shit and world events.
Mm-hmm.
I figured you were going to say you took a permanent break from Sweden.
Well, I mean, to be fair.
Okay, so what happened, basically, here we have the BBC saying, the headline is, "The Swedes are rebelling against a cashless society." Sweden is winning the race towards becoming the world's first completely cashless society. Sweden, yes. But there are growing concerns it's causing problems for the elderly and other vulnerable groups. None of the high street banks around Stockholm's spotless Odenplan Square handle cash anymore. You can only pay for your coffee and Cinnabon by card or with your smartphone at the local branch of the country's largest coffee chain.
They want to put a fucking chip in your goddamn fucking palm.
Yeah.
This is what they want to do. They want to put a chip in your palm that has GPS, and they're going to send it as this new trendy thing, like, oh, your credit card, everything is in there. It can't be stolen because it's inside of you and shit. And
fuck, it can't. You can still RFID right now.
It's gonna be the market.
But that's how they're going to sell it, dude.
I mean, people are going to get rich on that. You have your palm chip, you swipe it at the cashier. If they're using RFID, then you just fish the signal, and then you decrypt what they're doing, and then you have the credit card.
This shit just reminds me of what my preacher once said during a sermon.
Mm.
Preacher?
Yeah. Priest, whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
It's been a long day.
I was just curious because you were Catholic.
I am.
Amen.
But he's like, at the end of days when, all the good people or whatever go to heaven and the others are left on earth, Satan will put barcodes on everybody and shit. And it's like, you look what's happening now.
Yeah.
And you're like, shit lines up too much, man.
Yeah, the whole thing in the fingers and not being able to buy or sell without it, it's
a
little bit creepy, a little bit
and
antichristy.
And this is why it's very important to have a few firearms, because worst comes to worst, a few at a minimum, because they might want to put that chip into your wrist or whatever there.
Just hold on.
Go ahead.
Describe a few.
Well, I mean, I think someone should at least own 3.
I think that's better to just buy a ghost gunner and just make them when you're bored.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can make a bang stick or something with like a length of pipe and a shot.
The ghost gunner makes.
I mean, there are poachers in Africa right now that are making these cheap muzzle loaders, and they shoot chunks of rebar to shoot rhinoceroses, so they can get that Chinese medicine over to the Chinas, and stuff like that. But put it this way: if those people could make a firearm of that quality, just imagine, what we could do, with all the stuff we've got here lying around. So, long story short, don't give up your guns, because you can always shoot the bad guy there. They're dead. They can't chip you when they're dead.
If China was commissioned to be the manufacturer of these chips and the chip said Lucky on it, would you put it in your hand?
No, I would not. I would not put no China chip in my hand.
What about you, AJ?
Absolutely not.
Do you know what Lucky means in China?
Yeah.
Do you know what Lucky is in China?
I do not. Why don't you tell? 666.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No thanks.
So basically, like when you pull a slot machine and get 777 in our casinos, the equivalent there is 666.
Yeah. This one time I was at Taco John's and I ordered a number 9, medium Mountain Dew, and at the time the total came out 666. And when I heard that, I said, "Add a churro on there." No, that number scares me.
Yeah.
Whenever I buy something and it comes up that, I'm like, you know what? No, hold on. I'll grab whatever.
Just take a picture and share it on WeChat.
And
The first day when I was going to my job as a security officer, like removing tweakers from fucking the premises, I stopped at a gas station. I got some gas and a coffee. My receipt was $14.88.
well, that's a good omen.
Yeah, there you go. I was like, oh shit, no fucking way. I kept that shit. But anyway, about the cashless society being tested out, and of course the bottom bitch of the globalist conspiracy, Sweden, where it's impossible to get a gun, but rape gangs have fucking grenades, and the military is about to be deployed, and females get put in jail for reporting rapes from the poor migrants. They are literally the cucks which the globalists would want us all to be. They're the country of Justin Trudeau's. Yeah.
You just need to bend over and take it.
Yeah, you just gotta take it. You ever seen that edit on Pole of the Swedish flag where it's a guy like fucking taking a dick in his ass?
It couldn't have happened to more deserving people. I really don't like Sweden or Canada.
Well, because of this, but I mean, They was Vikings, man.
Yeah.
Shit.
I'll bet the Swedes were probably just sort of like the fodder for the Danes and for the Norwegians.
Shit. It was Vikings.
And,
We discovered
And their
America. And
Mongolian
shit.
neighbors probably just laughed at them.
We discovered America and shit. I guess the idea of having the military deployed to deal with certain areas where there's a prevalence of grenade attacks. I guess being the rape capital of Europe and then being also forced to become a cashless society. I mean, how the fuck do you have to be? Are you so fucking brain dead in Sweden where you don't fucking see what's going on? It blows my fucking mind. People are bitching. It's like, oh, there's old people that don't understand how to use the internet, or so we can't do cashlessness because it hurts old people. Sweden is such a perfect example of what the globalists want. You know,
It's sad, and that's why I just hope in Western countries, perhaps the United States, we get a leader like Uncle Saddam Hussein, God rest his soul.
we got Trump.
May his reward in heaven be great. Because when Saddam took power,
Saddam held that entire area in fucking check.
Yeah.
The Ba'ath Party really took care of business.
Yeah.
I hope both Colonel Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein reward in heaven is great, and I hope they walk the streets of glory forever and ever, because they were not the evil men that we make them out to be. And on that note, what I was going to say was, it's my hope that one day, what's it going to take to stop this stuff, guys? I mean, when Saddam took power in Iraq, he went to the podium and he said, there are traitors amongst them. And story goes, had them called out, dragged out of there, and a lot of people realized what was going on. So they started saying, oh, I'm loyal, I've always been loyal, and some of these guys were on Saddam's list. And he made those guys shoot the other guys. And guess what? People fell into line. And unfortunately,
it's the only way to rule Arab countries. I don't think that's necessary. I mean, I would love to see SJWs and Antifa lined up against the wall and shot, which also ties into one of our talking points here. But I don't think. I think that there's only one way. Like Gaddafi said, you're fucking idiots for killing me. Like, I'm the only thing that's stopping these this camp of saints type situation where the migrants just pour into Europe. It's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
Speaking of migrants, did you guys hear Israel is no longer going to deport the African immigrants from Israel?
Yeah, they're going to send them to Europe, right?
Oh, yeah, they're going to send them to Europe. Yeah.
Oh, hey,
I don't like Europe.
Yeah, fuck you.
I wish only the worst for Europe.
Yeah,
now,
Europe.
that doesn't include Eastern Europe, of course. I like Eastern Europe.
Yeah,
when it comes to West Europe, I hope whatever the worst thing you can imagine, I want that. I want them to flood in. I want the plague. I want the Skaven from Warhammer to start to exist and raid and sack Europe. And I want a meteor to hit it. Yeah, just whatever the worst you can imagine.
But Poland's all right though.
Yeah, like you said,
that's why I said East Europe.
Yeah, the
Eastern
Visegrad
Europe.
group, the Austro-Hungarian Empire is being rebuilt as we speak. Hungary, Orban, and Poland, they're becoming bros, and it's so retarded. Congratulations, Eurocucks, you recreated the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yeah,
congrats on that one.
My dream for Europe is this: there is a confederacy formed between countries like Hungary, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Estonia, Belarus, and maybe a couple others, and just wall off Western Europe from the Axis, and then just let Western Europe become a caliphate and then get blasted or something.
Or
that's
liberate them and stuff.
I would never. I wouldn't get a paper cut to save Europe. Fuck them.
Yeah, but at the same time, we could cleanse the evil ones from our lands, ancestral homeland.
They're all evil, man. Have you seen the United Kingdom?
It's living hell, and as an American, I would feel like I was living in hell there. I mean, what are they? They can't even shoot a burglar. If they kill someone that's committing a crime against them, they get charged with the crime.
I don't think they want to, man.
It's seriously, you know what? And you're right. They're freaking.
British men are the most emasculated, like, bubbly pieces of shit that I've ever seen.
I know, man. They had an empire, dude. They lost it, and god damn, I can't even. It's beyond everything. It's.
I took a poll with. Actually, here's a funny thing. I took a poll with a bunch of people from one of my other groups from other countries on who they thought was gayer, Canadians or British. And funny enough, Canadians lost.
Yeah, well, look at Barry or something like that.
They say that the British accent's gayer than an actual gay accent. Like, they do think that they talk like fags, basically.
Interesting.
This was all non-Americans, mostly people from Asia. So it was like there was like a bunch of people participating in the poll, and no, I'm just saying it's really funny that Canada actually lost to the United Kingdom under the invasion.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Is it the first time they just lost those?
Yeah. Well, and also the thing I don't like about Canadians is they cheapen the words of politeness in our English language. You know, they're always like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Man, you don't need to fucking say sorry. Just
Well, no, they're saying sorry.
yeah. And the old like hubble dub talking English. It's infuriating. But anyways, I'm just glad I'm an American, and on that note, every American can sleep well at night knowing there's a very, very well funded military just begging to do violence on your behalf. I can speak to that from personal experience.
Yeah, it's funny. I kicked out a couple Canadians from my job site the other day, and they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Anyway,
Like,
okay.
no, you're not sorry yet. You're about to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So, huh?
Won't say my job or anything, but Canadian had transferred over down and had to work with him for a little bit. They are the most just
Cooked.
snooty people. Like, it's so dirty here. It's like, well, then fucking leave. Go home.
Yeah, get out of here.
What are you doing working for a U.S. company?
Go away. Took our jobs.
Getting dual citizenship and shit.
Fucking
Yeah.
maple syrup backs. Get out of here.
In 2011, I won a contest to go see the third season premiere of Sons of Anarchy. True story. And me and my buddy, we went out to Hollywood 4 days and nights, got to meet Kurt Sutter and Kate Gall. And at the hotel they put us up in, there was 4 Canadians drinking by the pool. And these guys were the lamest, sad sack, Rudy Proof lames you'd ever want to meet. Me and my, yeah, and I had a bottle of that good Irish whiskey after the Irish hero, Michael Collins Irish whiskey. It's good stuff, good hooch. And they're out there by the pool. The pool's closed, but fuck it, we're drinking by the pool anyways. These got Canadians. And I go up. Yeah, I'm sure they had it. That's why I want to touch them. But
That's an old 4chan joke for you,
but anyways, we're like, oh, what are you guys doing? And he's like, oh, we're coming down here from Canada on vacation. It's like, oh, how are you liking it? It's like, it's boring around here. This Hollywood isn't what we thought it would be. And I'm like, what the?
What do you think of it? It smells like this, and there's hobos everywhere. That's and Jewish child molesters. Pretty much Hollywood in a nutshell.
Yeah, but anyways,
Hollywood sucks.
we had the bottle of Michael Collins. I go, hey, do you fellas want a drink? And they go, oh, well, we don't drink the hard stuff. And I'm
Oh, hard stuff. Huh? Whiskey's too hard for you, huh?
yeah, those freaking maple syrup drinking.
Yeah, okay, fuck Canada. Anyway, moving on to the next subject. So, I don't know if you guys have known this, but I'm sure you, Alex Jones, living in the Midwest, have noticed, like most people that live outside of the coast, that Californians are leaving in mass. Yeah, have you seen that going on?
They better not fucking come here, goddammit.
Well, they're going to Austin. They're going to Idaho. They're going. I don't think they're really going to where you are, but I might go to where you are. I'm gonna come in your house and I'm gonna snuggle up next to you in bed.
Hey,
All right. Yeah.
you won't make it, but
Yeah, I've been in Cali for too long. Anyway, so California, I saw an article recently which said that 50% of Bay Areans, and myself, like I said, I'm a Silicon Valley kid. I come from a tech family. I've seen, I've been in the center of Silicon Valley for my entire life, up to high school, when I came up here to the Redwoods in Cali and kind of chilled back, and then got more involved in religious things and became more conservative, pulled my brain out of the matrix and out of my ass and such like that. I saw an article that said that 50% of native Bay Area residents want to leave California. And then we have an article here which says that people who are living around Seattle, which, if you don't know, Seattle is basically like Silicon Valley 2.0. It's and it's kind of an extension of Silicon Valley. It's very tech orientated, very trendy, very liberal, very progressive.
which sucks because Valve is there. I like Valve.
There's a lot of good things about these tech areas, and it was nice to grow up in them. I'm not going to complain, but that shit's changed a lot. So the main theme that I want to talk about with this exodus from these type of areas is that I don't know if you guys have heard the saying, but I always grew up hearing it: as goes California, so goes the rest of the country. When it becomes too expensive to live in a big city because these tech companies are fleeing, and they're hiring the best and the brightest, and the best and the brightest are being imported from all over the world. So it's very competitive.
Best and brightest.
Well, I mean, it's like, let me explain it to you. To live in Silicon Valley, it requires a median income of $100,000 to even live anywhere near San Jose, Oakland, or maybe not necessarily Oakland. Oakland is the shitty side, but anywhere near San Francisco or San Jose, or in between, then which constitutes the Silicon Valley area, Cupertino, Sunnyvale, where I was raised, where I was born. Back in the day, there was a lot of families like my father who taught himself tech. He was involved in a company. He got in with a company called Crescendo, which was bought up by Cisco Systems. And if you haven't heard of Cisco Systems, you probably don't know anything about tech. He was a project director for them. He was making a lot of money. There was a lot of money going around for natives of the area in the 90s. We had a very comfortable, childhood when I was a kid in the 90s. And now it's like become outsourced. It's become globalized. It's become chopped up and sold off. People are leaving natives because they can't afford there. None of my friends from high school are able to afford living there. So I think I see this as a kind of microcosmic reaction, or a microcosmic example of how the world's gonna go. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but the thing that comes to mind is the movie Elysium. And I know IXIU said that if everything comes to the best, and we have kind of a world where technology can be spread apart equally and made to benefit humanity as a whole, then maybe this won't happen. But I
the
kind
only
of see.
catch is immigration. That's always the catch. And there's going to be a large segment of humanity that's going to be the underdog.
Sure.
But I mean, that's where nationalism comes in. Close the borders, keep the low IQ, basically worthless additions out, and then keep the housing prices low, and then use the technology to your own.
Well, I mean, I don't even know about that, because it's not Mexicans who are running the IT sector. It's Chinese and Indians and white people.
We just need to move to Greenland.
Greenland?
Well, no, my point is that the rub is in quality of life, and that has everything to do with housing costs.
Yeah.
So keep immigration to a minimum or not at all, and then housing cost is fine.
Well, I mean, there's a point in which free trade becomes the free movement of labor, and like this is what I'm saying, that this is the tie. This is like the. It seems to be the kind of progression of globalism. Is if you look at the most rising field right now in the economy, which is tech, based in the area which I'm from, Silicon Valley. It's become so impossible to live there, that everybody's fleeing. Like I said, 50% of people who live in the Bay Area want to leave California, and I'm one of them. I'm sick of fucking California. I'm ready to move over to the Midwest, to some fucking little town, or I don't even care anymore. Just somewhere where I don't have to pay out the ass to be able to live here. I see this as a pattern which is going to keep repeating, where globalism itself is going to become. You have these areas which become like independent city states, like the Silicon Valley, which are kind of like independent from what's going on outside of their own bubbles, and they.
Well, that's where a lot of the problem comes from too. They have no idea what the hardships or anything else that's going on in other parts of America.
Yeah. They live in their own little bubble. We talked about that in the last episode, but
Now, the question is, what do you think will be the effect of these people when they go into, like, they find a small town, they're totally unprepared for it? Because, for example, I moved to California and from a pretty redneck area, and I'll leave again eventually. But the thing is, what happens when these people that come from these bubble-like cities end up in an area that's rural? People like to hunt on the weekends. They're not going to make fun. They're not going to make friends with their faggoty progressive ideas. How are these people going to adapt to that?
Oh, let me answer that question, because I was a faggoty fucking Bay Area liberal. Being out, like I said, there is a study, an article. I talked about this last week. There's an article which said just being around nature and being away from the grid or the psychic egregor of the big city, it allows you to think for yourself. And when you tend to think for yourself, you tend to, if you're not a fucking total retard or hanging out with total retards, you tend to balance your own conceptions out and to recalibrate yourself. So I think that'll be all right. I think of a lot of, especially young people. I don't know about the older yuppies, but the younger people who are leaving, I think they'll be able to do all right. But the reason why I brought that up is I think that these kind of areas like London or major cities, New York City, Manhattan, I think that the main hubs of which attract the highest levels of business, the highest tier tech people, the highest tier engineers, they're gonna separate from the rest of society and kind of form their own thing. You know what I mean? What do you guys think about that?
I mean, they've basically already done that. Now, the big rub is that they need to not have any sway over things like the Bill of Rights. In a Americentric sort of perspective, that's our rub. Every other country has their own sort of culture or law or something that they don't want threatened.
Well, I mean, they can't do that because there's fucking 100 million fucking red voters with fucking guns. All right, so we've been, yeah.
I mean, that's the rub. If they want to isolate and just become like, ascended into their own tech industries, more power to them. I don't give a shit. Like, at the end of the day, all I care about is the first and the second.
Well, even if we become so stratified, I don't think they're going to be able to really clamp down. So let's hope that the best case scenario happens, and that it doesn't really become like a feudal, a neo-feudal system where they live on their little reservations and we live on ours. And
this next point is really good. The Trump talks with North Korea. A lot of my friends in South Korea talk to me about this a lot.
Okay, what happened?
Well, they're really happy about it. Like, they're happy that it's happening. They're happy that America is showing that it's assertive. A lot of them feel like Kim Jong-un is not going to try to trick Trump like his father did with America back in his time. And the reason is because Kim Jong-un is backed into a wall. Because on one hand, China wants him dead. On the other hand, America wants him dead. Unlike the United States, he's already created a rift between himself and the Communist Party by killing Kim Jong-un. So now he's kind of stuck. Now he has the ability to retire in, incomprehensible wealth by simply working with the United States. And the way that'll happen is he's sitting on trillions of dollars of rare earth. So what we do is we cut a deal with the Kim family.
We've
and
never really heard publicly from North Korea that.
My bad.
Jesus.
CNN, fucking Jesus Christ, get the fuck off my podcast. Yes. Anyway, continue.
Well, I mean, the rare earth, he doesn't have the ability to do anything with it, but we do.
Right.
So
Especially under the sanctions, right?
We put the extractors. Well, he couldn't do anything with it anyway. He doesn't have the technology to refine it like we do. So we go in there, we put in the refining equipment. The Kim family gets a cut of it, and the Kim family lives like, a king forever. An actual king, not like a poverty king. Like, he'll be set, and all he has to do is give in to greed.
So, if you guys didn't hear about what we're talking about, here we have it from CNN. CNN. The United States and North Korea have been holding a secret direct talks to prepare for a summit between President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. A sign that planning for the highly anticipated meeting is progressing. Several administration officials familiar with the discussions tell CNN. The CIA Director Mike Pompeo and a team at the CIA have been working through intelligence back channels to make preparations for the summit, the officials said. American and North Korean intelligence officials have spoken several times and even met in a third country with a focus on nailing down a location for the talks. Although the North Korean regime has not publicly declared its invitation by Kim Jong-un to meet with Trump, which was conveyed last month by a South Korean envoy, several officials say that North Korea has since acknowledged Trump's acceptance, and Pyongyang has reaffirmed Kim is willing to discuss the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. So this is what people don't understand. When Trump is out there waving his dick around and saying, my red button is bigger than yours, he's playing, read his fucking book, read The Art of the Deal. This is what he does. You negotiate from a position of strength. And if there's any country in the history of fucking humanity which has a fucking position of strength to negotiate from, it's the United States of America. We have been led by cucks and shit for a long time, and we have somebody who knows how to deal with our enemies and our allies in a way to give us the best benefit by waving our big American dick around, right?
Well, he knows the type that Kim Jong-un is. When Trump went to school, when he was in high school, he went to high school with kids that were the, their dads were like the Gambino families, fucking any of the mob bosses in New York, because Trump went to such a school. And, when he was in school, he was a troublemaker. He got in so much trouble that his dad sent him to military school.
Nice.
But this is Trump getting in trouble at a school with the children of mob bosses. So Trump knows Kim Jong-un's type. He knows that he's soft inside. He knows how to deal with
a big fat baby.
Literally.
Whose dad is basically a mob boss who was in close with the Communist Party, but Kim Jong-un was so spoiled that he burned his bridges with the Communist Party.
So, I mean, we all the threatening war and stuff. If we can denuclearize the peninsula, if we can take the nukes away from him, by God, I would love to see the whole regime toppled. If any regime in the world deserves to fucking get its shit pushed in by America, it's fucking the Norks, right?
Well, China are the ones that told him he's not allowed to shoot any missiles. Notice he hasn't done it in a long time. Because he knows that they will ruin him.
He's economically dependent upon them.
Yep.
I don't want to see North Korea go the way of the Doderbur.
I do.
Well,
I just want to see the peninsula reunified.
Yeah.
That'll never happen.
Family.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
It is absolutely going to happen.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Well, you ever seen any of their marches?
Yeah,
they're much-
and they have a bunch of fucking foot soldiers with AKs and Russian old technology. They would get their shit
They're all
kicked in a
starving.
second. It's
they're-
literally like fucking like imagine like a well organized like World War II unit against like a bunch of fucking cavalry in like the 1800s. Like that's like our like highly integrated
Yeah.
our highly integrated military against these like fucking
Yeah.
AK wielding fucking retards.
you can take it from me that one division of Marine would run through that entire country like shit through.
yeah.
But it would be an unnecessary ask. It would be a no holds barred slaughter. But the thing is,
It's okay with me.
as far as annihilating these people in this weapons deal, Gaddafi gave up his weapons before they. And for me, I feel that this is the preamble to a fucking war over.
I don't think so, because I don't think the risk is going to be worth it with China there. Remember, more than once we've had to either leave a war zone or were deterred and basically gave up even trying because of the presence of China. A good example was in Vietnam. They noted that the pilots of the planes that were flying against us, some of them were Caucasian, aka Russia, and a lot of them were from China also. Like, we can't deal with Chinese reinforcements in that area. That's something the U.S. military will do.
We don't want to
no,
fuck.
there's-
We don't want to fuck with China. They're like
They're too
our.
close to that.
Well, I
They
mean,
could-
it's
the Liaoning province, they could just pour over. And in the time that we bomb the runways, they'll already build like 10.
That's what happened in the Korean War, but it's different now. Our military is so superior to them, but we don't want to fucking kill China. China is our main trading partner. They hold a lot of our debt. We import so many products from them. We don't want war with China. We just want to fucking tell them to stop fucking us,
Yeah, and and let me take it from me. If there's a war between the United States, China, we would annihilate them.
Yeah, it wouldn't even be a question. It would just be done with.
I don't think we'd defeat them on their turf. I think we'd beat them in a fight somewhere else, like for sure.
South
But
China
Sea. I don't see it, because I think it's crazy to say that. Because one, they're in a military alliance with Russia, who's also adjacent to North Korea. So we have there's three major militaries in the world. There's the U.S. military, then there's the Chinese and Russian militaries, and they're right next to each other, and they're both adjacent to Liaoning province. So I mean, and Liaoning province, of course, is the border to North Korea. Now, I mean, the amount of military that could just pour in over the North Korean border is just unreal.
We don't have any incentive to antagonize China, and I don't think that we really want to go. Would China rather, when they're weighing the benefits of going to war with America, would they rather forfeit all of their lucrative deals with this is the stick that we hold, or the carrot that we hold over these type of people, is our consumerist economy. We have so much money that we consume on people's products that they import to us. They'll do what we say if it's not a big thing. If it's anything short of becoming a literal American vassal state, they'll concede to any of our demands because they want access to the consumers of our economy, our 300 some odd million people who consume these products on a daily basis. We're the biggest consumerist economy that's ever existed. That's the fucking stick and the carrot that Trump has to dangle over the head of any country which is not doing what we want them to do. And we've had weak leaders in the past which have not made use of that.
Well, another reason I see reunification as a possibility there is that North Korea's presence and utility to China has become redundant. The South China Sea is more important to them.
Yeah. They don't. They're ass out, and these talks probably signify that Kim Jong-un is ready to deal. Okay, so we've been on the air for about 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I just want to talk on one more talking point, which I thought was a little funny thing to end the podcast on, which, by the way, has been an excellent podcast. Again, guys, I'm going to be reading The Cloud Upon the Sea. You weren't even here for the first 2 hours. We're going to be reading What?
I always crush it at the end.
All right, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary. I'm going to be reading The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary on my channel, so make sure you check that out. Really interesting stuff. Definitely recommend people to listen.
Channel and be critiquing them for,
Yeah, go ahead and go to his channel, which nobody is subscribed to, and you can get a critique of my channel. Anyway, so Newsweek says that Russia's Antifa is being tortured and detained by Putin's shadowy secret security service.
You just need a tiny violin.
God bless them. I hope their suffering is immense.
Ilya Kasputin, a 27-year-old industrial climber in St. Petersburg, Russia, says he's not sure if he was arrested or kidnapped one cold night in January when he was thrown into a minibus while on his way home. It was around 9:30 p.m. and Kasputin was walking from driving school when he claims he was snatched off the street a block from his house and thrown into a bus. In the vehicle, he said he was confronted by 5 men who joked that they were the special service officers of the minivan. Kasputin suspects that they were members of the Russian Federal Security Service, also known as the FSB. Well, no shit, retard. During the following 3.5 hours, Kasputin claims the men tortured him with an electrical cattle prod while questioning him about an acquaintance from work. Quote unquote, I was thrown into the minibus, put on the floor, and handcuffed with my arms behind my back, Kasputin described in Newsweek from the safety of neighboring Finland, where he is now living. Then the car started, and the entire time the car was moving, I was tortured with an electric shocker. They demanded answers to their questions while one of them stood on my feet, pressing them to the floor, and a second man used the electrical shocker on my abdomen, hips, and groin. Wah! After torturing him, Kasputin claims his captors brought him to the FSB's office for questioning again, and then later to his house, which the police searched. He didn't see the faces of the men who tortured him, but he said the men who beat him and electrocuted him in the van were the same people who questioned him at the police station. In the FSB's office, the officers threatened to break his legs and kill him, but he was soon released after without being charged. Kasputin
shouldn't be treasonous.
Kasputin says he was tortured because of his friendship with young anti-fascist anarchists in Russia and because his own history of activism. Throughout the years,
Perhaps he should have been taught something of loyalty to his nation and homeland.
Yeah,
They should have
I think
shot
they
him.
I think they did shoot. They did just. I think they taught him right there.
And you know what? The first thing that came to mind is how this guy, those baklava-clad guys that smash over the van, somehow he knows what they look like. Give me a fucking break. That guy got everything he deserved. I hope he suffers immensely. Traitor.
Yeah, I wish we could do this in America, but you imagine the cat lady's crying. He's got a little picture of the fucking. He's got a little rash from the handcuffs. Oh, poor little fucking Antifa faggot. See, they don't take any shit over there. Like, if Antifa is starting trouble, they're going to fucking kidnap these people and torture them and understand what the fuck is going on. So,
that would happen in China. As bad as Russia gets, nothing's worse than China.
No, same thing. Yeah, you couldn't possibly do anything like that in China. You would end up in the same circumstance. Yeah, exactly. Unintentional organ donors. It's unfortunate that thing that has to happen, but we need to understand what's going on with these type of groups like Antifa and why you're rebelling against the state. When the state isn't.
Antifa represent is the communitarian, corporatist view of the world. You know,
yeah, it's kind of funny.
more
They're the fucking globalists and whatnot against the worker.
They're everything that an anarchist would be against. These are the people that want companies like Intel to rule a state, basically.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that so that our viewers understand that we're not against the workers whatsoever, but it's these people who are against the workers, and it's people like Trump and the Deng Xiaopings of the world who actually reformed China, who are for the worker. Sure, it might not be perfect, but those type of people are heading for a world where where you're not being crushed under the
Their
jackboot
world
of
looks like everybody lives in squalor. It looks like every city is the shittiest places in Brazil, except for a minute couple cities, like we were talking about earlier, where the aristocratic classes and techies live. And everybody else is basically in a polluted nightmare city. That is the future that Antifa is pushing for.
very, very ironic. Yeah.
My future is where we pitch cap them all.
Hell yeah.
Oh no! What are you talking about? That is the ideal future.
No,
Nah.
pitch cap them all. That'll get them all in line.
I just want the singularity and harmony with nature.
I'd like that too, man. I mean, that is my greatest hope. I, for one, would very much like to live in fellowship with all mankind. However, as I recognize that we do live in a device world, that diversity comes.
Oh, I'm
with
not
it.
talking about fellowship with mankind, man. Glass the
Oh.
entire Middle East and glass Africa. I don't give a shit. I'm saying that I want to,
Inshallah.
yeah, I want my AI familiar halo that plugs me into the singularity, but I also want to live in the forest. So if I can just have both, that'll be cool.
That'd be nice.
And with that note, we've had some very interesting opinions tonight on Mandala episode 12. We've talked about the occult hierarchy, which has been moving mankind along the lines of certain progression through groups like the Freemasons, people like Aleister Crowley. We definitely need to hit spirit cooking, and we need to talk about Pizzagate and Pita Wood. These are things we haven't hit yet. Anytime I bring these things up in my mind, like I've lost the capacity for a dualistic type opinion. I tend to think of it as just a potential, which is out there and something which has happened. And yeah, there are definite evils that exist, but the motivations of man are especially of our supposed leaders, seem to be heading for and influenced by what's called the Great Work. So I'd like to end this particular episode with a quote from Eliphas Levi, famous occultist, one of the progenitors of the modern occult movements, influential in the Golden Dawn, Thelema, all of the modern occult movements. And he's talking about the Great Work, which we spoke about earlier in the podcast from the book, The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, about how the world is being run from this esoteric angle. So Eliphas Levi talks about the Great Work, and maybe some of you have understood or have heard about this term, the Great Work. He says, furthermore, there exists in nature a force which is immeasurably more powerful than steam, and by means of which a single man who knows how to adapt and direct it might upset and alter the face of the world. This force was known to the ancients. It consists in a universal agent having equilibrium for its supreme law. While its direction is concerned immediately with the great arcanum of transcendental magic, this agent is precisely that which the adepts of the Middle Ages denominated the first matter of the Great Work. The Gnostics represented it as the fiery body of the Holy Spirit. It was the object of adoration in the secret rites of the Sabbath and the temple under the hieroglyphic figure of Baphomet, or the androgyne of Mendes. The Great Work is, before all things, the creation of man by himself, that is to say, the full and entire conquest of his faculties and his future. It is especially the perfect emancipation of his will. So, ending with that, I would like to thank all my guests here, and be sure to share and subscribe to the channel here so that you can catch us live. I want to say that I appreciate the 5 or 6 people who have been tuning in for the whole time to listen to us. We're live every weekend, Saturday around 6 o'clock. Today we were a little bit late because I had something to do. No problem. Sometimes we're a little bit late. I usually post the updates on my YouTube channel. So if anybody would like to add anything else before we sign off.
Well, I'd just like to say this is my first podcast ever, and I've enjoyed the privilege, and I would be happy to do it again. Hopefully, I lifted up the character.
Yeah, man, come
Great.
back next Saturday. Saturday evenings around 6 is when we usually do it.
Yeah, awesome, man. You really inspired me to learn more about the esoteric subject, because it sounds like
Hit me up about it. Anybody listening wants to know more about what we're talking, or you're yourself, just hit me up. You can hit me up on Discord, or my Twitter is @ShaktiBlazing. You can hit me up there. My Facebook is just now active again. I don't know the link for it. I'll post it somewhere. There's a link to my Discord on a YouTube video that I posted. So go to the YouTube video that shows a link to my Discord server. You can come on there and talk to us about the podcast or anything that you'd like to talk about. And yeah, so definitely, I mean, we can talk about certain things. I have a great idea of a lot of things I want to hit next week. The CIA and how they kind of became a very negative force which served materialism and money interests and such, how the dream of America became forsaken, how Masonry may or may not have been infiltrated, how the great noble ideas of the actual luminaries were perverted. We can talk about all that and see what happens in the next week. There's a lot of current events that it seems like it's rapid fire, just shit going on constantly. It's becoming more and more crazy, you know. It's like every week it's something else. There's a lot going on in Brazil right now, South Africa. We got to keep doing this, man, and keep getting more viewers and try to give our own little interpretation of how things are going. So before we sign off, anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
Fuck Canada. Fuck Leaf people.
Yeah, fuck Leafs.
Shakti, especially. Such a gay.
That's just rude, man. What the fuck?
that was fairly uncalled for.
What the fuck?
It's what I'm here for.
That's what
I'm a
you.
yin. I'm a yang to a yin.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah, the duality of man. I got you.
Exactly.
Got it. All right, so Ten Domine. Signing off for another episode of the Mandala, number 12. I can't believe it's been that long. Everybody have a good night, and we'll be back next week around 6 p.m. PST. And good night, everybody.